Welcome to the inaugural Use the Fours Smash Up podcast.
Yay.
We are four guys who like Smash Up a whole lot, and we have opinions to share. So,
Lots of them.
why don't we go? I guess we'll start alphabetically with someone who isn't me. So, Berryl, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with Smash Up to this point.
Yeah. I think I am the youngest person here by far, which is kind of funny. I was introduced to Smash Up in, I guess, middle school, towards the end of middle school. It's 2017. Dating myself. But I didn't start playing it like earnestly until 2020-ish. Now it's the hobby I spend the most time on. Munchkin in particular was probably the expansion I played the least, which I think is probably common for a lot of people, since it's got a lot of self-contained stuff. It kind of it's not actually a different game, obviously, but sometimes it can feel like it. I'm really hopeful that we can share some really valuable insight on this podcast. Get people to understand the game a little better.
How good are you now at Smash Up?
Well, I mean, I won Smash League this year, so
There we go.
Berryl is probably pretty close to the best player in the world.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, let's not overlook this. I'm here tonight with three league champions over the various years. So
hey, that just means your year's coming, man.
We played this game a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's safe
I
to
believe
say.
in AndIQuote winning Smash League 2026. I believe it.
Well, we'll see if I have the time to devote to that. That's my excuse at any rate. I don't have the time to lose. So, all right. Well, I guess Berryl, if you're finished, we'll move on to you, Ludichrisness. Tell us about yourself.
Absolutely. So I have been playing for a little while. Played a fair bit about 6 years ago. I kind of got into it when my wife was pregnant with our first kid and looking for getting more into board games since she didn't have as much mobility, and settled on Smash Up, and it was great for the replayability, and got really into it, discovering all the combos and synergies, and it really kind of scratched that itch that I imagine probably goes along with any kind of collectible card game, but without the huge money sink for chasing after rare cards and all the unpleasantness that kind of goes along with that. And it's a great game, and it's continued to impress me just with how deep and strategic it is, and certainly safe to say it's the hobby that I spend the most time on now. But I also have a little bit of a unique perspective, since over the last couple of years, I've been working together with AEG behind the scenes, especially on the errata and rebalance projects. So I started with some playtesting with them during EMD, so Excellent Movies Dudes, and then later on through a long convoluted series of events, I kind of got involved with some of their stuff behind the scenes with planning out the errata and rebalance projects. So
I think it's worth noting here that
really exciting over the last couple of years, just seeing this finally come to fruition, the shift to print on demand as a future for the game, and really to be able to see these changes to the existing factions get pushed through and finally go live. So this is a very, very exciting weekend here, since it's what is it? It's Friday today, and Monday is when Munchkin finally goes live.
Yay! I'm sorry, I almost cut you off, but I think it's worth noting that all four of us have playtested for some amount of time.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. We have maybe a lot more inside knowledge to this game than most people would care to know. But but yes, and that actually is a good transition onto Sonus.
Yes.
If you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself. I think you're the elder statesman of Smash Up among us. So.
Yeah, I've been playing Smash Up a while too. My group of friends was always obsessed with games with factions. It was Small World before this, and got into Smash Up right as it launched. I was waiting for that game with factions, so pretty much played it actively since it came out. We switched to our favorite game, and it never left. The faction synergy was too intriguing. Theory crafting when you're not even playing, thinking about the match you just played. All of these things are big in this game, which is to me a sign of a good game. So never really went away. And then primarily 3-player, a lot of 4-player early on too, actually. Eventually learned not my thing. But yeah, as soon as I saw the first call for playtesters on Board Game Geek, it was for, well, actually, maybe not the first. I think it was maybe the third. But started playtesting with It's Your Fault with sharks and such, and have playtested every set since then. So definitely have my hands deep into this game.
For sure. And I think it's interesting, kind of building on what both Ludichrisness and Sonus have said. I mean, in this game, you're not like ripping up in packs of cards and spending thousands of dollars trying to get, the ideal set. I feel like a lot of time is spent, if you get deep into Smash Up, hunting combinations and unique synergies and things.
Yeah.
Which is scratches like to the point we've made, scratches that itch without
breaking the bank,
costing you a lot of money necessarily.
It takes away all the friction of one of those
Yes.
card games, right? Where it's like you have to, go out and buy new packs and always be on the lookout for it and be
And especially with
staying on top of like a changing meta and stuff. It's like once you've got the game, like there's new stuff that comes out, more now in the last year, but like there's new stuff that comes out, but by and large, like the game is what the game is.
And I think print on demand helps that a lot, because if you're hunting for that synergy, but you want to play it in person, like you don't need to get a whole expansion with maybe 3 factions you don't want. You can just buy the one you want.
Print on demand has a lot of benefits. I've
Yeah,
talked with a lot of people over the last 6 months, and there's valid complaints about it.
of
The
course.
cost per faction is higher than if you're buying like a box set of an expansion in the store or something. But having everything always available, right? Like that's a huge benefit. Like if there's one faction that you want 3 years from now, you can be confident that you're going to be able to get it through print on demand, and it's going to be a perfect match to what you already have. Or like you say, like if there's an expansion that there's one faction, the example I always give is Oops, right?
Yeah.
So Oops has Egyptians, which are awesome, and it's got 3 other factions that I could probably take or leave. So having the opportunity just to get the one faction that I really want there, if that had been an option back when I got Oops, probably would have just gotten Egyptians.
That was actually part of my first print on demand order, was just Egyptians from Oops.
No.
Been interested in print on demand ever since Plaid Hat Games went to it. I thought it was a perfect idea. So I'm really glad it's happening.
It's got a lot of potential. Yeah, and this month, I think we're starting to see a little bit of the potential of it as well, like expanding into some of the offerings in the future. With this month has the first combo of the month, so it's Tricksters and Star Roamers, and people can pick them up for a buy one get one half off discount. If they want to try out that pairing or integrate it into their collection. So like we're looking at ways with AEG to try to make it a little bit smoother for people to slowly build their collection over time with factions that interest them and suggest things to them, maybe combinations that they wouldn't have thought of before, and really try to grow the player base that way.
And Tricksters in particular are unique because they've been around the game since the beginning, one of the original 8 factions, but they've also just been recently fundamentally reworked.
Yes.
And that's kind of what we're talking about with Munchkin tonight. There were 10 other factions prior to Munchkin that we've spent a few months digging into and cleaning out like an old wound, I guess, and reworking them into something that's able to keep up with the rest of the factions in the game in a very meaningful way.
I've been very pleased to see the reception to those 10 rebalanced factions. I think by and large, there's always some people that are questioning, why did this faction get reworked, or why didn't my favorite faction get reworked? And the truth is, like there was a lot of thought that went into it with picking out which ones are going to get the rebalances and which ones are going to get a lighter pass with kind of like the errata that was applied to the print on demand products. And I would say almost everything got something. There's very few factions that in the transition to print on demand didn't get touched up in some way or another. But the 10 rebalances, like I think people have agreed that it is a significant improvement, and ultimately it's just a lot more fun. They captured the same feeling of the original factions. We worked really hard to kind of preserve that kind of feeling for them, but it's just they're so much more competitive and so much more fun at doing what you want them to be doing to capture that feeling.
Vampires are playable now. That should be big
Yeah.
news right there.
They're good.
Nice being able to think about them for once.
Yeah.
Yes, these are things you have to think about in a tournament setting in a draft.
Oh yeah, the winning game this year. The winning game this year was vampires.
That's
That is
true.
crazy.
Go back in time, to 2014 and tell somebody that.
I think the
We've
last time
said
they were used so highly was that Nelligan used them 3 years ago to get a game. I think it was against Hydra, and it was in like the playoffs as well.
oh,
I just like
AndIQuote,
that
you
you
never
don't have to be so crazy deliberate about who you pick them with, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to pair them with a self-destruction faction. You don't have to pair them with a power counter faction. You can just pick them and let them do vampire things.
Yeah, they basically work for anybody now.
They're very versatile now, which is wonderful. That's one of the joys of the game is figuring out all the unique synergies and ways factions mesh together that you don't necessarily see on the surface. I guess I'll go ahead and do my own introduction since all three of you have gone at this point. So I've been playing Smash Up regularly since 2019. I got my core set box, which also included Awesome Level 9000 and Sci-Fi Double Feature, used secondhand from a used game store the same day that International Incident was released, actually. And it's one of those things where I played it a couple times and was immediately hooked. I saw that there were dozens and dozens of other factions available, and I was like, I gotta collect them all. So I did. I got Sheep for free when it was. They were still doing that promo.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Bought the Titan event kit for $10 on eBay. I mean,
Nice.
what a time to be alive.
That's a rare find.
It was right before they stopped printing them, or it became well known that they were stopped printing the Titans, and then the Titans multiplied in price by 10 to 15 times what I paid for them. So
Yeah, they've long been in demand for sure, and especially with the addition of the new Titans in 10th anniversary, and then the reworked Titans with the rebalances, especially with print on demand with the change to kind of like the Titan format. It's no longer on the back of the dividers since print on demand doesn't come with those plastic dividers anymore. So I will mention, maybe for anybody listening that's interested in the Titans, that this is another question we get a fair bit on print on demand, is whether there's going to be any kind of Titans pack, I guess, that has everything there. And the answer is yes. It's going to be in the next probably month or two that there's going to be an item on print on demand, which is all of the Titans that you can get for all of the factions, all in the same kind of normal card-sized format.
Breaking news.
wow. Yeah, that's
Sorry,
excellent.
Dre, I cut you off there, AndIQuote. Go ahead.
Let's see. Let's see. Playtesting. I've playtested since Disney. So that was my COVID hobby, was getting super duper into Smash Up. Because there was nothing else to do at the time. But I've playtested every set since then.
I
I'm
think you're
still
really well known as well for your very extensive self-play tournaments as well, right?
Ah, yes.
Yes. Well, that's honestly, that's just me picking up from where Nelligan left off.
Yeah,
I really liked the format that he did them in, and it was a good excuse to play every faction in the game. Quickly learned that there are some that I don't like playing, several of which were Munchkin factions, actually, because there's just so many things that Munchkin set brings to a game that just make it that much more of a headache to think about. And I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about that now. We've got the reworks, around the corner that are massive improvements over a lot of these original Munchkin factions. But what was the for those of you who were maybe there at the time when it was newer, what were your perceptions of the Munchkin set, its power level, the mechanics it added to the game?
I think Sonus is the only one that can really answer that here.
Yeah, it's hard to remember perfectly, but I remember when I got the original first attempt with dwarves, felt like it was going to be more complicated than playing wizards. At the time, wizards were kind of the play a ton of cards faction, and dwarves was blowing my mind in that way. We actually thought orcs were going to be really good. Thieves, it was hard to tell. Warriors, we were like Eternal Heroes going to be broken. That was our first thought with Warriors. Mages, I don't remember initial feelings with mages at this point. Clerics, we thought the discard recursion was going to be busted because we were used to zombies and
Makes sense.
thinking they're by far the most busted at the time. And that was like my initial impressions. Halflings, of course, were like, these got to be better robots. Um,
Well,
Well, I think you mentioned something there, which is really true, which is it was hard to tell. You
Yeah.
mentioned for orcs in particular, and I
Mhm.
think, like AndIQuote said, Munchkin brings so many new elements to the table. You've got 2 extra side decks that people won't necessarily be familiar with right away, and the nature of the Munchkin factions, and I think we really discovered this as we got into the rebalances. There's almost all of the Munchkin factions are very limited on the amount of draw that they have,
Mhm.
which means that in a given game or in a given series of games, you're very unlikely to see like all the same cards every time. So there's a lot to discover with them, and I can see how it would take like a lot of playthroughs before you really realize like this faction doesn't really work, or maybe it's really inconsistent, or I can kind of see the idea for what they're going for, but it just doesn't really pan out in practice most of the time.
And I think
Elves was a
piggybacking off of that, because they didn't have much draw, combined with all the extra mechanics and stuff, it made people really afraid to experiment with them. And I think that plays into it taking a long time to figure out, oh, this doesn't really work, because people were afraid to even try, would be my guess.
To be honest, one thing, and I know that there's everybody's going to make fun of me every time I talk about bases because I really like bases, but the Munchkin bases aren't doing them any favors because in the
No.
core Munchkin
We're
set,
not.
the
We're not.
bases are just really, really bad. The way that they don't account properly for the monsters that are going to add to them. And I think probably it was because they were still figuring out how all the mechanics are going to work while they were developing Munchkin, and bases probably didn't get as much attention as they should have. But like if you just compare like breakpoint to VP ratios, when you account for average powers of monsters, and especially in the original Munchkin monster packs with things like web trolls, just causing monster spam, it like the breakpoints are very high compared to the rewards. So adding into kind of like the take that nature of some of the factions like orcs and stuff, like it can make some of those games really a slog.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, the bases in particular were what I always dreaded in my solo play tournaments because you never know if you're going to get something like the Gauntlet, which just spews
Oh.
out monsters over and over again. And if you're not playing a destruction faction or something that can handle monsters, either by moving them away or
Well, you
just
have to
otherwise
move
getting
them
rid
away.
of them,
They
yeah,
replace themselves.
you're in for a slog. Your game's going to take at least twice as long as it would normally, just because there's so much bloat you've
and
got to push through.
And the more monsters you bring in, of course, the more treasures you've got, which are going to add kind of like another element of randomness. Which randomness can be enjoyable in the when it's done in the right way.
I
I
think
mean, every Smash Up game
variance would be a
has
better word.
randomness to it. But with the original treasures, there was such the way I think you describe it, AndIQuote, usually, which I really like, is like it's a rich get richer kind of scenario, because the winner gets first pick of the treasures, and the original treasures were so imbalanced that some of them were just always picks, and the vast majority were like, I don't care about this. So they always get their first pick of those best in class treasures like Wishing Ring or Halitosis, and that just helps them springboard further.
Well, in the early days, on the note of monster destruction, real quick, we thought this is what's going to make vampires viable because we were like, it's something for them to destroy. It gives them a treasure, like all these things. And I did orc vampires as one of my first combos with the set, and I was so excited by it
I love it.
Heck yeah.
Well,
initially.
it makes so much sense.
Yeah,
It
it
should
does.
work, but it still doesn't because the original monster designs were bad for that.
Well, and also
Because
vampires don't destroy other people that much. Like it was just what, Night
also
Stalker,
true,
Big
but the
Gulp.
destruction they do have is mostly 2 or less,
Yeah,
and that's
which
really bad for the
none of the
original
monsters that
monster.
matter fall into.
Yeah, because Poultrygeist is usually a 3 or more, especially when you actually care about getting rid of it. And then what are you going to do? Like you're going to have like Night Stalker eat a web troll as your big burst play.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we thought it'd be helpful because of the treasures and the lowering the breakpoint, but vampires still shone through. And plus, on the treasure note, a lot of them we thought would be amazing, and then turned out over time there was just a few that were amazing.
The one for me that comes up there is Potion of Line Cutting. For the longest time, like in the rebalance, we had no idea what to do with this treasure because the basic concept, like it's sort of appealing. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna take this, and it's like a placeholder, and it's like I'm gonna get first dibs in the future. But there's such a small window of scenarios where that actually matters. And again, it's like the sort of thing that you don't recognize until you've played it a few times. As like, wow, this isn't nearly as good as I thought it was going to be.
And it took time because you didn't know when a treasure would show up. So you could play 10 Munchkin games and maybe see one of the treasures once.
Exactly.
That's what made factions like Thieves and Dwarves an investment as well, because not only do you have to learn the faction, you also have to learn, especially for Dwarves, the treasure deck, an entirely additional set of 22 cards.
22, yes.
Yeah, in
22.
treasures. And know which ones to dig for, know which ones to just junk. And then hope and pray that you get to those treasures in time to actually, do something. So
and maybe not as big of a deal for thieves, I guess.
No,
because the
I
original
agree.
thieves are spending all their actions just desperately trying to draw treasures to begin with. But
true.
But definitely for dwarves, and I mean, like thieves, they mostly care like, is this a treasure or not?
Exactly. Yeah.
But in fact, sometimes as thieves, I remember I would get frustrated when I drew like a really good treasure because I was going to have to spend it for an effect that wasn't really that good. So I sort of wished that I could just use it for the ability instead. But I don't know. It was a frustrating design.
Yeah, the bad factions in Munchkin really relied on a couple key cards hitting the field and staying out, like Master Thief or Sword Lord. But with that lack of draw that was mentioned, if you didn't see him, you didn't really have a good game, or if it got removed too fast, because all the other cards weren't good.
And I do wonder from the original Munchkin playtesting, like whether there were so many things moving around at the same time. I can only imagine with the interplay of all the monsters and treasures and bases and 8 factions being tested at the same time, like how some of this got through. And I wonder if some of it is because you had factions like Wizards and Miskatonic at the time that maybe would give you more draw, so it would mask some of those issues. But also, I guess in the same set, you've got mages and you've got halflings who both have really good draw and lots of extra minions. So I can see how some of these issues don't seem as apparent in an all Munchkin context.
Yeah, especially since the factions probably have okay parity with each other, kind of like the monster factions did.
Yeah, I mean, and back then there was still a philosophy that the set interplay was top priority, it seemed, and then shuffling with other stuff was still a priority, but just in case someone only bought Munchkin, they needed it to be good and as a set.
Yeah.
Well, Munchkin in particular, right? Like I think Munchkin is probably the one which is most likely to be played as its own game.
Yeah.
Right. I know I've seen several people over the years say that they set Munchkin aside and only play it by itself just because it's so different. So
and it brings in so much to the game that you wouldn't expect, right?
We liked it a lot. It was just sad that orcs, thieves, and dwarves and clerics slowly fell down. Dwarves stayed up a while until we picked up quickly that if anyone picks removal, you can't play dwarves because you need a gold digger to stay out.
They're really dependent on gold digger.
Right.
But surprisingly, elves became one of the best 3-player factions, which we didn't
also
expect.
in 2-player as well, like elves.
Yeah, I don't think that's very surprising.
So let's talk about that then. How would you guys pre-errata rank the Munchkin factions from strongest to weakest? Because I mean they were definitely they trended towards the bottom, but there were several standouts that remained a high tier for a long time, or at least high mid tier.
I'll go first on this, just from the older context. So originally it was picked up very quickly in 3-player that elves were really good. They were winning a lot, and somehow trade was consistently stealing that perfect card to win them the game. So elves stayed, I would say, were the best from that set. Mages were doing decent early on, and there's actually some people, like some of our favorite Germans, Chucky and Blackjack, they held mages to high regard in 3-player, basically S tier. We weren't at that, but they saw those types of results. But after elves and mages, we weren't we kept trying clerics, we kept trying warriors, and they had some success, but they faded out in 3-player compared to the others. And halflings were, I guess they were the best before elves initially, and then went to second. And it was interesting because the French community was doing 2-player tournaments, and they didn't have faith in halflings, and Chucky went there and won multiple rounds, ended up winning their whole league, and then they became believers in halflings.
Well, clearly, I think warriors were the best.
Well, clearly.
No, it's hard for me to consider like the pre-errata, like the strength levels of them, because they are so dependent on like those key cards. Like if you're playing clerics and you just draw Deep Friar and Cardinal and Collection Plate and Been Gone, like I'm gonna have like a fantastic game and like it's gonna be great. But you're just not always gonna see that stuff. And sometimes you're gonna get, Word of Recall and Good Habits and Turners and Holy Rollers and just like this bottom 3/4 of the faction that you don't really care about, and it's not consistent in any kind of way. So it's hard for me to rank them. I agree, like elves and halflings, like they've got so much more draw, and they still have kind of like those really good key cards. You've got like with elves, you've got the VP stealing card. With halflings, you've got like Rude Awakening and stuff like that for your big drops. So but they've actually got the draw to consistently get to it. So I think that's probably why they floated higher up in the tier lists, just because you could more consistently pull off those really big card plays.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is something we've come to value a lot more over time, especially in those tier lists. Like, can you do things on your own and do them every time?
Well, we've talked a lot before about how the game's gotten faster.
Yeah.
Games are shorter, fewer turns. So like you're either going to get to your good cards and use them, or you're just never going to see them. Warriors is kind of a special case for me. I love the play style. I don't know. It always scratched kind of like an itch for me, where it's like you get to stall, but then you also get to turn the stall off when you're done with it. And like there's a lot of stuff in the game where it's like, especially I think early on, you've got sleep spores with plants, and you've got just dragons like just ruining the base and stuff. And it's like you can stall, but then it's like, what are you going to do when it's actually time to burst? Warriors being able to switch modes like that really appealed to me as kind of like a 2-step game plan. And the problem, and I think we see a much better version of that later on in Wraith Rustlers, where it's the same kind of, stall the base, but then get lots of payoff when you're ready to blow it up. Warriors, it's such a good idea conceptually, and it was just ruined by all the Munchkinisms in it.
Yeah, I really like warriors actually. Not as much as you do, Ludichrisness, but
I don't think anybody could like them
but
quite
yeah,
as much as him.
the Warrior NATO's games that I played with Category 5 made me a Warriors believer.
That's so much fun.
Well, on the note of play styles, like we actually liked all the play styles. It just ended up unfortunate that too many cards weren't good. It was like, oh, I'm having fun, or I can see how this could be so much more fun. Which is why I was very excited that there was a rework possibility.
Yeah.
What did you think the Orcs playstyle was back then?
Styles. Sorry?
So what did you think the Orcs playstyle was back then?
We just assumed big power, like Sword Lord's giving everything power. They have 2 extra 5s. And so we were just like, look at all this power. And then it was like, oh, wait, I'm not drawing any of this power. I'm drawing Dogpile that I can't play. I'm drawing all the specials, and they're just clogging my hand. But we thought it would be all this power.
That makes sense.
But protection ends up not being totally amazing in 3 players, so none of that really mattered.
Protection's also a lot less useful when you've got really big minions to start off with.
Yeah.
Very true. Although,
Chopper, best ability in the game. Talent do nothing.
Please don't.
Hey, that survived the rework in some form.
This is something I've mentioned a few times in different places, but it surprised me as I started to dig more into Munchkin. And I would say I really got to know the decks like a lot more doing the rebalance. Like, there was always kind of like the perceived wisdom of them previously, but really digging into like what's actually wrong with these factions. But what really impressed me was the range of play styles. Like you've got I think almost every faction, other than orcs and clerics, like all of the factions in Munchkin, just have something totally different that they're doing compared to any faction before them, and honestly, many since then. Like feel more repetitive in some ways compared to some of the crazy concepts in Munchkin. Like you've got thieves who are like grabbing all these precious cards and then blowing them for big effects and stuff like that. Like that's a great concept for a faction, and it's just really sad that the original version didn't really pay that off in a satisfying way.
Well, we don't have to be sad anymore.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess I can do my list now. Like the others, I've got halflings and elves at the top. Then below that, I've got I have dwarves and warriors and mages. Those feel basically interchangeable to me. Like I said, Munchkin isn't exactly, well, old Munchkin in particular isn't exactly something I had a lot of experience with. But yeah, all those three probably around the same, and then clerics below them, thieves and orcs at the bottom. Like nothing like the other two I haven't said already.
Right, and I think even 7 months ago, 6-7 months ago, when I made my last two-player tier list, thieves and orcs were at the very bottom.
Yes, they were.
Because tricksters and vampires had finally ascended and left them in the dust.
Tricksters
Honestly, now
have
it's like
never
I look at your
quite
tier
been the
list
bottom
and
barrel.
I look at the bottom and it's like we got Shield, we got Sinister Six, we got Spider-Verse, we got
Yep.
Masters of Evil.
They're next.
Yeah.
One hopes.
Totally.
One can hope.
Well,
No.
it took me a while to actually truly believe all the factions had to just be bad, like the ones that were bad, thieves and orcs and such. And I spent some time specifically on thieves doing combos that I thought could specifically support thieves. And it did actually show me something that, for me personally, it took thieves from in the bottom tier with the worst to moving up a tier. And it was purely the threat of stealing a victory point.
Yeah.
Just this being scared of it happening raised them a tier in our games. On top of, I believe it was Bandit playing Anansi Thieves, which was the best one, it seemed.
That's the
So
thing
Thieves
with
were able to move up
Thieves.
slightly, actually.
That's the thing with Thieves, and that was what I think was so frustrating about them is the game plan is good, the payoff is good, but you're only going to really get to do it maybe like one game in 5 or one game in 4.
Yeah, their best partners were all search-based. So Anansi's up there. Superheroes are up there to get Master Thief out as soon as humanly possible. And
Wizards and shapeshifters and
wizards,
time travelers to recur
plants, yeah. Quality Mojo, like Star Roamers.
I tried roamers too. Keep out the good thing if you get it with Port.
Yes. Yeah, shout out to Quality Mojo, our resident expert French player who interacts with us a lot.
You can blame him for vigilantes.
Yes. He is. We'll get to that in a future episode, I'm sure.
Yes.
For now, let's talk about the Munchkin reworks. We've touched on already, kind of digging into them and figuring out what's wrong with them, and trying to make them work as intended in the 2026 Smash Up meta. But what were some of the plans and goals that we had for Munchkin? You've really done it.
Is it okay if I kind of Munchkin? You've really done it. Is it okay if I start that off a little bit? Just
go right ahead.
Kind of organizing the project there. So going in, we knew this was going to change a lot of stuff in Munchkin, right? Like there was at least 2 factions with orcs and thieves that were getting completely overhauled. And as we got further into it, it was pretty clear that clerics and mages were also going to get really substantially changed. We knew that the treasures were changing. We knew the monsters were changing. We knew the bases were changing. So it was like I was talking about before, there's so many interlocking parts in Munchkin. It was hard to know exactly where to start for it. But I would say with most of the factions, it was pretty clear that they've already got a good concept, a good identity. We need to make that identity shine through more and really capture what's good about it and make that visible in more games, and just get rid of all the weird munchkinisms, the stuff that doesn't work, the stuff that maybe seemed like a good idea at the time, the Uber cards, the cards that never get played, and try to bring things to some sort of baseline. Although with all the rebalances, there's always an argument about, should they be allowed to keep the really good stuff they had before because it's like iconic and everybody loves it.
You
Yeah.
said
compared
the
to
I word
trying to
before
bring
anybody
things in
else
line.
did.
Yeah. But clerics and orcs in particular, I think we had to do more with giving them their own identity that they didn't really have.
Yeah.
Clerics' identity really consisted of that preservation and recursion idea, but something that I really appreciated more as we dug into clerics is just how much internal tension there is in clerics about what to do with the cards, like your recursion and preservation cards. So 7 of their original minions with Holy Roller and Turner, their role was to get stuff out of your discard pile and back into your deck. But then their best cards for recursion, which are Cardinal and Collection Plate, would get stuff out of your discard pile straight into your hand. So what I always asked was, it's like, you've got a good card in your discard pile, and you've got the opportunity to play something like Holy Roller to recur it. Are you going to do that knowing that clerics have no draw? It's like, I want to get this card in my discard pile again as soon as possible so I can do whatever the good thing is, which is usually a partner card. So it's like, what's my best option to do that? And it's a total gamble. And maybe that's fitting because of the design of Holy Roller being like a gambler, but like, you have no idea. Like, if you shuffled it into your deck, you might never see it again because they have no draw. If you just leave it there and maybe shuffle something else back in, then, are you going to see Cardinal and Collection Plate soon enough to get that good thing back? If you shuffled something else back, maybe it's going to be even longer before you see Cardinal and Collection Plate. So it's like the faction has no idea of what it actually wanted to be doing. It just had a bunch of recursion abilities kind of stapled together, probably because it was kind of thematic, but they didn't work together, and they really created like negative play experiences where it wasn't enjoyable because it was just completely luck based with what's the right choice in this situation, and 50% of the time you're going to guess wrong.
Clerics especially, I feel like, suffered with some of the treasures in the deck. I remember there was a specific game I played one time, which was Cleric Elder Things versus, I don't know, Wizard Mad Scientist or something, a long time ago. And I had set up this great play with a Deep Friar, and Been and Gone, and Eldest Thing. Now I guess it's called. I was about to do a triple base score, but then the Wizards Mad Scientist player first hit played Dungeon Rulebook to knock out Been and Gone, and then played Potion of Paralysis to knock out Deep Friar, and it's like, I have just lost this massive play that I've set up.
That's so sad.
Yeah, it's so.
I mean, the person that did it.
What now?
Like, the opponent enjoyed that moment.
The opponent was also me. So this was a solo tournament game, but so part of that was cathartic, and part of it was going, why is this possible?
In fairness, neither of those treasures changed with the reworks.
Yeah,
that's true.
So it's gonna happen to you again.
Clerics got a lot better.
They did.
That's also true.
Clerics got a lot better.
Yeah. So is it a good time to talk, I guess, about like maybe clerics in particular, like
if we're on the topic,
how we kind of tackled them?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Who's in charge of clerics again for the rebalance? I can't even remember.
It was
Up and Adam.
Up and Adam.
Oh,
yes.
Adam, yeah. He was a big clerics fan, actually, and it was cool he's not as competitive a player, so it was cool to see, like, what do people actually like about clerics? Like, what's the good stuff there, other than like the obvious, like, Deep Friar and stuff? Like, what do people care about preserving? And like, I would say we really tried to pay attention to that in Nerdy, in the original 10 factions. There was an element of that as well. Like, we really tried to listen not just to competitive top tier players, but like also to, like, a wide swath of people that have played with these factions and like, what do you like about them? But for clerics in particular, we did struggle, I think, to figure out what their identity should be. And sort of the byline in my mind that crystallized after the first few weeks was the idea of, it's like, clerics are going to be the perfect partner for your other faction if you're lucky. So it's like, some of their cards are going to line up perfectly with whatever your partner wants. And maybe that's going to be like a swarm partner that gets all these global power boosts. And maybe that's going to be like a big engine or a singularly powerful minion, like Eldest Thing, like you're talking about with that big play. And you're going to be able to set up like this big wrecking ball triple score. But whatever your partner wants, clerics will have the perfect card for them. And the question is, are you going to get it? So do you feel lucky enough to get that? And they are unusual because ultimately they are a support faction, but they don't have any draw. They don't want conventional draw anymore. They don't have search. They're not guaranteed to get you the right card. But I think what people will see and hopefully appreciate with the new Holy Roller, with being able to cycle cards into your deck and take another shot at drawing the right one, is that they do have more opportunities to hunt for the right card for the job. And what I hope people will recognize is that whatever your partner wants, clerics will have the perfect tool to help you.
That was pretty detailed. Yeah, that sums it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add? I mean, I
Oh,
for various reasons couldn't be as involved, but
I
I
liked
like that. The idea of the monsters also helps offset draw, gives you a little more time. So Turner playing an undead adds that
is
help.
cool. I remember that. I think it was you, Sonus. Were you kind of opposed to Turner playing an undead monster early on because you didn't like the idea that they would be like summoning the undead?
No, I would have said they're not actually summoning it, but there needs to be a monster to turn. And so
Yeah.
it made sense to me that they could play one. You just didn't think of it as them playing one. They're just finding one.
Turner was always such a weird card because it's got it like historically it had two options, and one of the options was just straight worse than Holy Roller in like three
Yeah.
different ways. So it was like you really hope there's an undead monster that you get to use the first half for, because otherwise it's like you're not using Turner.
Yeah. It's bad before.
And piggybacking off of that buying time thing, we added stasis to them, which I think is really cool.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. An
Is this
extra reward.
the second faction that we've just aside from backtimers that at least that we've talked about so far that uses stasis, right?
Yay.
I was going to mention that's a benefit of these late reworks is they get a benefit from new mechanics and everything learned to flesh out an already cool idea.
And I think it was
really worried about in the first set of 10 was it's like, people going to like the inclusion of things like burying? Are they going to think it's cool? Are they going to think like, oh, they're just trying to shoehorn stuff in? By and large, I've been really pleased. Vampires, it feels like such a natural thematic fit. The one I was really pleased in the original rebalances was spies, like getting to include like buried cards as like a sleeper agent, like you're activating later. It feels like such a cool fitting thing for them to do is like spring this surprise. And like I agree, like getting the chance to use these in the right places has just been a lot of fun. And orcs had a dueling card for the longest time, and we ended up cutting it even though I liked it. But
I mean, the dueling went somewhere else.
Yeah, we got a duel card in somewhere else, which was cool because that's, I don't know, people love dueling for some reason. But yeah, we tried to make it work, and like we didn't want to shoehorn things in. We didn't want like it to just be there for like representation's sake.
And like the stasis and clerics, like it was pretty thematically fitting. Like we spun it as divine blessings, right?
Yeah, like making a prayer and like it's going to be granted in the future.
That's kind of cleric's tagline, as I recall. It's just living on a prayer. You know, there is a huge amount of random chance still with clerics, but they're better equipped. Yes,
I like that. It's a good tagline.
But like penguins, like, and I mean, this was part of the question as well. Is it's like for clerics, it's like, do we let them keep? You know, you got deep fryers, and deep fryers are way better than a normal minion of their slot. Do you let them keep deep fryers? Do you let them keep cardinal and stuff like that? Do you let them keep been and gone, which is a really strong action? And like penguins, like in the original set, there has to be this concept when you have randomness involved. There has to be this concept of like there's a good thing waiting for you if you get it right. Like your payoffs need to be slightly better than normal because it's random. Like you're not always going to get it. So the cards have to be a bit above the norm. And I think we achieved that with clerics.
And it also helps to give them. You can have these stronger cards when you have a hard time developing the table. with
Hmm.
those
Yeah.
cards. So
Yeah,
they don't have
clerics
a
don't really
minion
have any
base.
engines or anything.
Oh,
All their
they
values coming
do
in.
have divine intervention now.
Oh,
So that's
yeah,
the
sure.
card and I think figuring out that card was a real moment for clerics
Yes.
with they were backing up really badly on plays, and stasis just helped so much with this
Yes.
because they had their terminal plus power actions. They had a take control action, which works really well on monsters, but is really hard to use on another player for removal terminally if you don't have any other extra actions because you're not adding any net power to the base. They had, Bin and Gone might want to be terminal. You've got, and you might want to use Collection Plate to grab the terminal card. Like they had lots of stuff that could have been terminal that you might want to be terminal, but no extra action plays. So Divine
For
Intervention
folks,
just because. Oh, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, for folks listening who might not know what you mean when you say terminal, what does that mean as far as like smash up cards?
Yeah, what does terminal mean? Well, if only there was somebody here who could define it. Yeah, so when we talk about terminal cards, it's going to be like, what are you playing on the turn that you actually plan to break a base? Like, there's lots of cards that are useful in any context. So Bin and Gone, for example, is a modifier you can play at any moment, but you might want to play it terminally because otherwise you're kind of telegraphing where you plan to break. Because if you play it on a base, people can be pretty sure you're not planning to break that base anytime soon. So there's lots of cards and clerics that are kind of competing for that terminal action play, but they can only play one of them. So they sort of back up on those. And a lot of the cards don't make sense to play otherwise, like the plus power. They had 3 of those actions to begin with. That was +1 to all players' minions, or excuse me, to all minions, because they forgot about monsters.
Another thing out of nowhere.
And like it's just you just back up on these plays because there's no useful time so you end up playing stuff like Word of Recall that just maybe it'll do something, maybe it won't, who knows, and it's just not a satisfying experience. So Divine Intervention. Oh, go ahead.
Divine Intervention. I mean, that's not a card name someone who's played clerics before would recognize. So is this a new card, or?
It is, yeah. So Divine Intervention. We don't rename cards. We didn't rename cards very often.
No.
Clerics actually got 2, which I think is all of the renames in Munchkin, if I remember correctly. But Divine Intervention, I kind of wanted to send this message that it's like Word of Recall. It's gone. It was dead weight before. It's just gone, and we've got something new that's really going to be important for you. So to help people pay attention to it and maybe draw attention to it, we gave it a new name, Divine Intervention, which is a very important cleric style card from the Munchkin game. So hopefully it doesn't feel too out of place. But it's just this really useful card, which is exactly what you need for whatever the situation is. So it's either it either chains, so it like plays another action, or it plays a small minion, so you can get that holy roller out quickly to look for the card that you need. But then really importantly, it goes into stasis for next turn. And then next turn, you get the same thing again. So you either get a time loop, which is like play 2 actions for next turn because you get that extra action out of nowhere, or you get another small 2-power minion. So it like another holy roller or another like partner minion or something like that. It's just like a flexible extra play queued up for next turn. You don't need to decide in advance what you're going to do with it. You can wait and see what you draw. You can line things up with your partner, but it's going to give you something flexible for an extra play on the next turn, and then you can build around that.
And
That's
I confirmed
excellent. And you said there were 2. What was the other card that got renamed?
Reverse Curse. So it was Remove Curse in the original, and Munchkin did this a lot, was adding kind of like random disenchants everywhere, and like the early game did sometimes too. And obviously below par for like what a disenchanting card should be, probably because like with treasures and stuff like that, there had to be some counterplay for it. But in a faction with no draw, it was just total dead weight, just having just a disenchant card. So we got a little bit more creative with it. The art for that one shows clerics in their tiny little Pope Mobile Curse Be Gone truck driving around. So Reverse Curse is what it became. And that, it became a movement card, which, again, really good terminally, but it also has a really cool kicker on it, which is not just destroying an action, but wherever that minion moves to, you can transfer an action away from its base. And this actually sets up a lot of interesting plays with their other cards. They've got 2 curses still, which can be negative modifiers on minions. So you can move somebody over and reposition that curse, send it somewhere else. I also really like it with bin and gone. You can move somebody and also move bin and gone, so bin and gone is ready, and that gets rid of kind of like that telegraphing problem I mentioned earlier with bin and gone, where it's like, yeah, I'm sure you're not going to attack the base with bin and gone, but now you can move bin and gone away as you break the base, so it becomes a lot more potent.
There's
And
a
you
layer
also-
of unpredictability for your opponents as well as yourself. You're not the only one who has to
Agreed.
deal with cleric's randomness. So, go ahead, Sonus.
Agreed.
Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, and then on top of that, just the nature of the game is what partners like this card, and so many jump out immediately. Of course, overgrowth. You could start
Oh,
a
yeah.
double base for overgrowth. It scores that turn, but you move it to the next base, so it can happen again. You probably maybe have a bin and gone on the original base, so you save one of the minions to go to the next overgrowth. So it also will have a lot of synergy with other factions.
And when I confirm, those are the only two reworks or renames in all of Munchkin. Just those
I believe so,
reverse
yes.
curse and divine intervention.
Okay.
Overall,
And
though,
we-
if
we
you like
should-
clerics, you're gonna love them now. They
Well,
should
yeah,
have every
that-
card they had before that anyone liked,
Yeah.
but better.
And that was kind of a
Cardinal,
theme with all the
deep fryer, bin and
rebalances, though.
That's it. Yeah.
There is one qualm I have, and you guys know exactly what it is with clerics, which is Holy Roller
Oh,
kept kind of that trap option that I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier to shuffle a card from the discard pile back into
Well,
the deck.
hmm.
And I worry that maybe it's going to lead people down the wrong path with how to play them because it creates that tension internally. A surprising number of people really wanted to keep it. So,
I mean, it does still have a use outside that shuffle because of join the club, right? Because it's got its stasis
It
option.
does.
If it would leave your discard pile, it goes into stasis instead.
That's
Yeah.
the main reason that I was convinced to keep it, is because of that internal synergy with join the club. And you can imagine, together with divine intervention, being able to flexibly play that 2-power minion for free. The plays that you can set up there, where now it's not just divine intervention you've got queued up, but also join the club that can do something cool next turn as well, including remove somebody from the base. There's a lot of cool stuff there.
And I didn't really want the shuffle to stay, but another couple things is it combos with another Holy Roller. If you shuffle something in, the next Holy Roller can try to cycle to it. It's also, in theory, you can try to tailor your discard piles so that collection plate is more likely to hit the thing you want. So there are things, even though I didn't want to keep it, there's uses.
Yeah, there are some uses.
Having the option's nice.
I was just going to say, it did make it interesting from the perspective of parity. Like, we believe in general, if you're comparing against like ranks of minions and stuff, like your 2-power minion should always be, about on par with the 2-power minion of another faction. So Munchkin is unusual now because you've got two-power minions between Scroll Shuffler and Holy Roller that each do basically the same thing, which is shuffle a card back from your discard pile. So we had to find a way to add some level of value to them that would also be on par with each other while still being meaningfully different. So that was an interesting exercise.
I think we did a good job with that,
Absolutely.
though.
Yeah. They feel. I mean, they read very similarly on a first glance, but they do seem like they would feel very different in practice, just because they're accomplishing different things entirely.
But for mages, it's more about, don't feel bad about discarding the good card, like to power your stuff, because you've got a way to get it back.
Yeah, it's even having the option available in the future means, okay, I don't have to worry about this.
Exactly.
Feels
Like,
like-
it takes that mental load off.
Feels like time to talk about mages then.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Well, the overall problem to me with mages originally was they had discard as a cost intentionally, which is fine. They didn't have cards that react to being discarded or anything. Again, fine, it's a great niche. The problem was too many of the payoffs weren't good enough.
I agree.
So they needed help in that regard. But they did have some cards that were great, like Wand Wiz stayed the same. Speed Reading stayed the same. Charm.
Well-
I really needed Charm to stay.
Speed reading got
I
an
almost
extra
wanted
copy.
Charm to get a discard cost, but we didn't go that route. Yeah, mages were interesting. And in particular, I think it was interesting with mages trying to figure out, how do we make them feel distinct in 2026? Now that, like, discarding, like, for effects isn't this brand new revolutionary thing that maybe it was in Munchkin. Like, I guess you had ghosts at the time, but now you've had beauty, you've had sumo, you've had other discard focused factions that I can't
Goblins
think
to
of
an
off the top
extent.
of my head. But
Wow.
Yeah, sure, clown, whatever they do.
It's kind of become almost an arbitrary mechanic that sometimes gets shoved into a faction. It's like, oh, I need a cost. Well, discard a card.
Oh yes, the patented Smash Up discard.
The patented smash up discard, and we see like action heroes have it, right? For
Yes.
their time loop effect, they have to randomly discard a card for some reason. It's like,
Mhm.
sure, okay. So mages, it's like, how do we make this feel meaningfully distinct? And I really liked the visual of like, wait, mages have this really expansive spell book that they can use things out of, and the discards are like the mana or the magic points that they're spending to cast those spells. So mages really crystallized around like, they've got a really, and I know this is a little bit triggering for AndIQuote, but they've got this toolkit of effects, and they can't get all of it because they have to spend cards. So like, some of the cards you're going to spend are going to be the other spells that you don't get to cast. And but again, like with Scroll Shuffler, you've got a way to get that back now. So you have to pick what you want to go for. What I really like about them is they've got a couple really flashy payoff cards, just like stuff which is like, these are really big plays. Like, you've got some Enchanted Evening, which is just like, let's play every minion in your hand. You've got Embiggen, like, just throw everything away and get a ton of power out of it. But you can't get all of those payoffs in the same game, so you kind of have to pick and choose.
And I remember we asked the question before, when we were early on them, was, what are they? What is their role exactly? When you see them, when did you want to pick them? And we actually struggled initially because they were jumping around. Cards were too expensive for their payoff. So we were able to shuffle a couple of things around, leaning a little bit more into doing power better with new Zap, Scroll Shuffler.
New Zap is a big one for
Yes.
sure. I think
Especially with their increased
it's
output of monsters.
arguably close to too strong, but I think it's okay. Before, and that's such a clear encapsulation of mages, right? Like, before, it was discard a card to do something really basic that other people get to do for free. But now it's like, no, you just get to do the thing, but if you discard the card, you get like a super version of the thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool. They have a bunch of different paths you can take, and like you said, you're not going to get to do all of them because you have to spend the card. So, but we've worked to make the choices meaningful in all cases.
Yeah. Speaking of choices, I don't know, Berryl, I think you were involved with the discussions with this with Crithm as well, with figuring out what this would look like. But did you want to talk maybe a little bit about Scroll Shuffler?
Oh yeah, so we were trying to figure out what it should do besides shuffle a card. I think we had crystallized around it was going to be shuffle a card pretty early on. Maybe in the first draft, but maybe early after
Not
that.
first. It was like either version 2 or version 3.
Okay, yeah, it was early on is the point, and we were trying to figure out what it should do on top of that because we knew that Holy Roller was getting more, and so this shouldn't stay as just the shuffle. And so there were a few ideas that we had floated around for what it should be. And I think Crithm had floated, oh, you should shuffle back a Scroll Shuffler to get.
Mhm.
I think he might have suggested power right off the bat, but the point was setting up scroll shufflers as a resource in your discard pile for other scroll shufflers to become better power output.
Yeah, that was really cool. The idea of like, I'm discarding, and it is a real cost, but it's also set up at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a
And I
good
think
workaround instead of just reacting to discarding. It was a nice
Yes.
different way to do it.
I'm really
Yes.
glad that we, for the most part, didn't give mages many reactions to discard other than new Embiggen, which is kind of not even really a reaction. It's more just an extension of what it was already doing.
Yeah.
I like Embiggen as a reaction because a lot of the time it's still just going to be what it was before.
Right,
It's just
exactly.
going to be like a big hand dump, and you're just getting power out of it. But it is so intriguing to me, and I actually did this in the game yesterday. Is that you can stage it in advance and not use that mass discard. I think it's one of the only times I've seen where it's just like, you've got this optional discard tacked on top, but it feels very natural. Like, if you're reading Embiggen literally, the first half of the card is like, yeah, discard as many cards from your hand as you want for no benefit. Yeah, sure, okay, I'll just throw my hand away for no reason. But like, you can generate power out of it if you want immediately. But then mages, if you're willing to wait a little bit, they can do all those discards to generate other effects, but still get the power later on.
Mm-hmm.
And the new Recover Arcane Wisdom is pretty strong with them Biggin if you
Oh,
have it in
yeah.
the same hand.
Oh, we should probably talk about Blaster Master.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Very
There's
fun.
at least one person where this was like his favorite change in the entire project.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
something I really hoped we could do. It took us a little bit to figure out a way to word it to be
Yeah,
possible.
it always did this thing it does now, but just we had to figure out how to make it work where you could still get the effects of discard.
There was actually a pretty nutty version early on, I think. I think it attacked not just other players, but like it could attack any deck.
Oh, yes, I
it's
remember that.
You could blast the top card off the base deck or the top card off the treasure deck and
That
stuff
was
like that.
so
Like,
fun.
it was pretty fun. But I think what we ran into was we didn't want to just hit the top card. We also wanted like other players to have the option to discard from their hand instead. And it kind of became for text constraints, like it was one or the other. Like it was either going to be
Yeah.
like other players, you're only hitting other players and they can choose. It's up to them to choose, or it's hitting the top card of any deck. And
Yeah.
I think we wanted to focus more on the antagonism there and the interesting choice that other players had to make.
Yeah, and I think part of the other reason that we stayed away from doing any deck is that you don't really know. The decks are black boxes, right? So you don't really know what you're getting rid of in advance.
Basically random.
Yeah. And I think my favorite thing now with Blaster Master is that only a few other like leader or like the 5-power slot minions give me this feeling. It's like I definitely just played my like best minion. You feel
Yeah.
like you've gone into like Yu-Gi-Oh! Exodia mode. It's kind of
like
like
an
you've just played
overdrive.
Yokozuna or the Professor, which is so different than when you play some other leaders where it's like, this is a good card, but I don't feel like I definitely played my power
Her
card.
doctor, for example. Here's
Yeah.
your power
yes.
counter. Yeah.
I like the defensive aspect too. I was playing the game I did yesterday was actually versus Tricksters, which was really funny. So it's like I blow up a gremlin and then I make somebody else discard a card.
Would that be a random card?
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
not. There's a lengthy clarification.
Or there will be. It's not up on the rulebook wiki
Yeah.
yet.
Spoiler alert, it's already written.
Do we have any more to say about mages, or do we want to move on to dwarves?
I don't think so. Mages got it's a little bit like Miska before where it's like they got a little too a lot.
Yeah.
The basic concept was really good. It's just the benefit wasn't enough for the cost.
Yeah.
And it was figuring out like how do we make it better but still feel like mages.
I'll say you should definitely feel like you're still playing your old favorite mages, but a stronger faction.
Well, I think that was kind of the point with all the rebalances, right? Is that we're keeping the field, just making it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I just think for me is I did like mages. It just feels like I'm still playing. I'm happy Zapper's doing what it did, but you actually get to do it, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
It
Right.
still has that feeling of like I'm blowing through my deck. I'm just throwing cards away left, right, and center,
Yeah.
and getting all this cool stuff from it. And like you can blow up your entire hand, and you can rebuild it, and then you can do it again.
Okay, so Sonus, do you want to tell us a little bit about reworked dwarves? Because they got pretty extensive changes as well.
Yeah, so dwarves pretty unique to them out of all of the other factions, is they need to play the treasure cards. They're not just grateful they have them or aren't using them as fuel. Dwarves needed to play them. And they had this problem where a few problems. One, you had to wait till the treasure discard pile had stuff, and you didn't have that much influence on making sure that happened. And then a lot of the treasures weren't even useful enough for them. There's a couple that were, they relied too much on Gold Digger. If you couldn't get a Gold Digger, you probably weren't doing anything almost as far as dwarves go. And another big problem, Bandit calls it the Sonus rule. Gym Grabber was doing the same thing as Loot Lover, but way worse. And because treasure could be so scarce for you, you weren't about to use it on a Gym Grabber when you could save it for a Loot Lover. So, and then Dwarf King was inconsistent.
Some debate
there's
whether
quite
it
a
even
few
worked or
things.
not.
Did you feel before Sonus, like we've talked, like obviously they relied on key treasures, but did you feel like, so I think what people learn as they play original dwarves is, there's a couple really big plays that they can pull off, like they can work, but they really rely on those treasures, like halitosis or crossbow. Do you feel like they were overly reliant on those particular treasures?
Oh, absolutely. They were over reliant on names are sometimes going to be lost. I mean, like boots of butt kicking.
Oh yeah.
Very important for them, specifically though, with Loot Lover, so that you could combo it with the other dwarf card that lets them play it as a special. So clowns actually were a great partner because of that. They could play the dwarf action that plays boots of butt kicking, so you have a big special play. It started devolving into specials, basically where this goes. You get Loot Lover with as much on it as you can get on it, and then you halitosis it off to double score, or anything you can do to just keep it in play.
Yeah, and it was hard with dwarves because it was almost at cross purposes with what we were doing with treasures, because we were trying to make dwarves better and more consistent, but then at the same time we were kind of nerfing some of their big plays, right? Like halitosis became ultimately a base modifier that you had to set up in advance. It couldn't be just this special out of nowhere, and that's a big hit to dwarves if they're trying to plan like a big wrecking ball. So I guess what were some of the steps that we took with that? Do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, I mean, a big thing we did as far as the treasures go, you mean?
Yeah, well, with the interplay, I guess maybe between dwarves and treasures.
Yeah, so we still wanted dwarves, liking play on minion treasure. So Loot Lover staying the same, but we wanted to spread out the power in the treasures so it didn't feel like you just had one type of play.
And
And
most of the treasures are minion modifiers now. I
About
was doing the count
50%. It's
about
almost the
about
exact same
50%.
number.
Yeah.
Several treasures that were standard actions are now minion modifiers.
Yeah, but
And vice
several
versa.
minion modifiers are no longer minion modifiers.
That is
Yeah.
also true.
and what's nice is that
I
it
was
opened
paying
up,
very close attention to that.
yeah,
Right.
which opened up so you don't only need Loot Lovers to do big plays because some of the treasures, such as Potion of Idiotic Bravery,
That's a
made
good
it so
one.
you could rely on other minions.
Yeah, I love the cash out play now with
Crossbow.
idiotic bravery and playing idiotic bravery 3 times on the same minion and just
Oh,
building up
yes.
like a giant 20 power minion that blows himself up, and then you just leave behind like a gem grabber or something to score the
Yeah.
game solo.
Yeah, and Gym Grabber is just, since you said it's so much more helpful to them now because they need a treasure in the discard pile, and Gym Grabber was basically doing nothing before. Now it puts some in there for you and even can get you a modifier immediately, which just ends up doing so much for them. It was almost like immediately this is what they need from version 1
Yeah.
for the most part. Give them a way to get treasure.
Yeah, there's two things with dwarves. So first of all, and they kind of tie into each other a little bit. So first of all, Gold Digger obviously didn't change. Gold Digger is key to their strategy. Do you think, Sonus, that they're overly reliant still on Gold Digger?
I still think he's a key piece for them, and so we were noticing they need to make sure they still get to their minions, which is where New Dwarf King came in. It took us a while to
Yeah.
figure out the right Dwarf King.
That was the second thing I was going to talk about is, Dwarf King, I think it's easily the leader that took us the longest time to figure out.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only times that I think we didn't have a clear picture going in. What is this leader actually going to be doing? Because dwarves are really driven by their lower rank minions.
They basically didn't have a
And
leader before.
we didn't want to give dwarves recursion. So, like, you play a Gold Digger, it's base scores. Now you need another Gold Digger. When are you going to get one? We didn't want to just give them recursion. We wanted to just help them get to more Gold Diggers from their deck.
I think
So,
the gem grabber change helped them not have to be 100% reliant on gold diggers, because they can also fetch minion modifiers from the treasure discard as well if they happen to get one.
that does
So
help
what
too, for
does
sure.
Dwarf King do now? I actually don't know off the top of my head because I haven't
Gem
looked
Grabber?
at Dwarves in a while.
Dwarf
Dwarf King. Yeah.
Oh, Dwarf King. He's actually a really cool change. So, and it helps in a number of ways.
Yeah.
So basically, and it took a long time. Like, we workshopped several wordings to try to figure out how to word this. I don't love the way it's worded right now, but it is what it is. Okay, so conceptually, what it's doing, it's taking a treasure and it's shuffling it into the treasure deck. And on its own merits, that's actually a good thing for dwarves.
Indeed.
Because if you're putting a treasure you don't want right now, or you're not going to want back into the treasure deck, it's delaying a reshuffle on the treasure deck. And that's a reshuffle on the treasure deck is like, it's not the end of the world for them. Like they can still win after that, but it's a lot harder because you just lost your whole toolkit. So it's delaying that, which is just good on its own merits. But depending on where the treasure card came from, you get another benefit. So if the treasure card came from the treasure discard pile, you draw a minion off the top of your deck, which is really good. So Aladdin draws, he's a leader, he draws an action off the top of your deck, but Dwarf King is going to be getting a minion, which is generally better, especially when you think like dwarves are driven by those low power minions. Like that's where a lot of the synergies and interplay comes from. So you're getting a minion out of your deck, which is probably going to advance your strategy. But you have to pay for it with a treasure out of the discard pile. And sometimes that can be good or sometimes that can be bad. But if the treasure is in your hand instead that you shuffle back in, you're not drawing a minion, you're playing a minion instead. And that's where a lot of their surprise plays can come from now, is being able to, get an extra gold digger out of nowhere because it's played as a talent. And then you can immediately grab something back and make a big play with it or something and still have all of your plays left over still. So like there's a lot of flexibility there. And I think it really cemented that Dwarf King, like they're led by their lower rank minions, but Dwarf King is like helping to marshal them and organize them.
Yeah, he needs them to get back and get him more treasures. So that's kind of the thinking. And
He's paying him off.
yeah,
Something else that we haven't touched on that is related to treasures and dwarves, and that dwarves especially appreciate, is Wanda dowsing was changed.
Yes.
So that it does not force a reshuffle of the treasure discard pile.
yeah.
The one treasure that could really ruin dwarves and their game plan entirely is
Really,
that
it was just there as a screw you to dwarves.
yes, exactly.
So funny that it had a dwarf on its art too.
Yeah. Well, and one cool thing on Dwarf King, it was mentioned that you might want to shuffle treasure into the treasure deck so it doesn't reshuffle. But there's actually a cool combo between Dwarf King and Gem Grabber, which I pulled off to win a game, which was I shuffled a treasure to get then played a Gem Grabber, and it was able to get the treasure I shuffled, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think there's something similar you can do with mine, I want to say, which is like search for a treasure and play it.
Yeah, that's another thing. Exactly.
Yeah,
so
there's some cool stuff there.
Yeah, dwarves definitely took that toolbox of the treasure deck concept and turned it up to 11. Especially with now that the treasure deck itself is better and a better toolbox.
Yeah, and other cards just work better for that idea, like salvage, right? So salvage is like the special, you play a treasure from the discard pile. The problem it had before is it's like, how many treasures really make sense to play as minion modifiers as a special before the base scores? So it's just better now. It plays it on anybody, so maybe you get like a key potion of cowardice out or something like that. And it can also use the talent on what you play. So maybe you're milling out like magic missile so that you can play it and then remove it on special. Like it's a really satisfying chain of plays.
Yeah, boots of running really fast. That's a pseudo halitosis. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I guess we can talk about the treasures now,
as well,
since they're so intertwined with dwarves.
Yes,
and we touched on them already, of course. But yeah, I'm very pleased with where treasures have ended up. My whole
you were the treasure czar.
Yes, that was me. I've graduated from Bear Hussar to treasure czar.
If anybody is mad about the high ground nerf, AndIQuote is the one you can blame. He forced us into it.
That's a topic for an episode down the road, perhaps.
I'm really happy with the treasure. I'm happy the wishing ring. I drew it, the new wishing ring. I drew it multiple times in testing and actually didn't play it.
So tell us about the new wishing ring, Sonus. What makes it so much better? Because that was far and away my least favorite treasure. Yeah. I hated that card.
Or it just gave you a victory point when you played it. Now it's play on your minion. It's a minion modifier, so dwarves can technically search it out. But you play it on the minion, and at the start of your turn, you can then place it in the box to get a victory point. So it takes a turn delay.
And it's not spammable.
And it's not spammable, exactly.
What I love about the new wishing ring is how many factions in Munchkin can wrestle over it. I love that thieves can snatch it up with Strip Bear. I love that dwarves can blow it up with My Precious and then draw it themselves with Gold Digger and play it themselves. I love that orcs can just take it from you and take control of it. I just really like that. Like, there's this treasure that everybody wants the victory point, and they're all just gonna go to any length to grab it.
Well, it's,
And my understanding is that that's what happened a lot in playtesting. Like
Yeah.
the Wishing Ring did not score
Yeah.
that victory point that often because it was so hotly contested.
I think I saw
which
it.
is ideal. That's the best possible outcome I could have hoped for.
Yeah, I
Wishing
think
Ring.
I saw Wishing Ring played like 3 times in one game. It wasn't even with a dwarves, maybe even not even thieves in the game.
yeah, it's cool that opponents get a chance to answer it, and it also can draw aggro if you wanted to. So
Right, exactly.
And for those of you who are keeping track, if Wishing Ring is played 3 times in a game, that means it did not successfully fire off, because once it does, it's out of the game permanently after that.
Yeah, and minion modifiers are a lot more vulnerable than base modifiers as well, right?
Agreed.
Like, you remove the minion, you remove the minion modifier.
But if you put it on somebody big, that makes the base more likely to score.
Easier for the base to score, exactly. So it's a nice tension for sure. Like, it's a minion modifier, it takes a play, and you just really want to make sure that it lasts until next turn.
and it's really good synergy piece for Barry. Just another reason you might want to partner with
Oh
Barry.
yeah.
That's true.
Although a little hard sometimes to bury a treasure card in particular, because it's not in your deck to start off with. So, Operative, for example, wouldn't be able to bury that.
Right.
Hit it with
Magician's
Gem Grab or
good.
something.
Skeletons might be able to.
Very
but
rarely. Grave
Yeah.
space.
Grave goods, sure.
And the leader.
Yeah, but
Yes.
if you're burying it with the leader, it's on his base, so you might as well just play it on him.
Maybe he has
Depends.
boots of running really fast.
Depends.
Yeah, it opens up lots of opportunities. Is the point?
Yes. Yes.
So we've talked about Wishing Ring. We've mentioned Potion of Idiotic Bravery and how ludicrous it can get, if you will.
I think that's
but,
one of my
what-
favorite treasures now.
What is the change with Potion of Idiotic Bravery that makes it so?
It's fun, actually. And early on, we didn't quite have the wording exactly right for it. I like the wording we ended up with.
Yes.
But okay, so it gives one of your minions +5 power, which is pretty much unheard of. It's basically wish, and that's it. Is the only other straight +5 power. And then, but what it also gives is it gives us a mandatory special ability to the recipient that they have to kill themselves before their base scores that turn. So you give it to somebody, but you have to win without their power. So it helps you break the base, but not necessarily win it, which
it hurts you.
indirectly makes come at me strategies more viable, because if somebody's trying to overcome that come at me, they're more likely to not be able to do that because they're blowing up part of their power.
Also, ninja bases.
And ninja bases are there's a lot of scenarios where it's really interesting. I also really love that we figured out that disco dancers would be able to use Dancing King just to copy the special ability that it grants onto other people, so they
and the +5 onto somebody else, like
or
yourself.
the +5. Yeah, divas can copy the +5 while Dancing King slings the special. Like, there's a lot of really fun stuff there.
Yeah, disco dancers in particular, I feel like, have gained so many interesting potential copying effects with the Munchkin reworks. I was thinking about that earlier today when updating my list. There's so many interesting things they can do now.
Realized that the halfling cards could copy the cancellation, which is really cool.
They've been able to do that this whole time. We just didn't think about it until now.
I've been happy with the minion changes on the treasure too. I mean, thinking from a dwarf perspective, Gold Digger, I just felt like I had so many things I could think of, which felt great. Tiger Steed was an amazing choice a couple times. Dwarf Hireling, much better now. I found myself grabbing each of those with Gold Digger, which is a nice change.
So what makes them better now?
Dwarf Hireling now, as an on play, you can draw any treasure from the treasure discard pile. Since he's a minion, you can grab an action, potentially Boots of Running Really Fast or Potion of Idiotic Bravery. Things for terminal plays even. Tiger Steed not only destroys a minion of 2 or less, you can instead choose to destroy a monster. You just don't get the treasure from it, but with the new monsters, you'll be grateful sometimes.
So Tiger Steed can destroy a monster of any power.
Any power, you just no treasure collected when you do it. Or you can
I'm not sure I ever mentioned this in testing, but something I really liked with the hirelings was with the final versions that we got, Halfling Hireling, Dwarf Hireling, and Tiger Steed, it almost feels like you're conscripting a member of another faction. So Dwarf Hireling, it's like you've got a dwarf on your side, Halfling Hireling, obviously you've got like a Halfling chaining there for an extra minion body. And then Tiger Steed now feels a lot more like this is a warrior card where you're going to be able to axe any minion or any monster that you want, regardless of power, which is something pretty unique to them.
I think the Hirelings already had
Sure.
that feel, but I think it definitely got dialed in more for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Halfling Hireling didn't change, right? That was
No,
one of
it
the
did
few
not.
treasures that we did not touch because it was already in a good spot.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, our goal with treasures was really to just flatten the curve, the sine wave that was happening with quality throughout that deck. And I think we succeeded in a big way and made
I
them all
agree.
very interesting. Trying to distribute treasures after a Munchkin-based score is just going to be a lot more difficult now just because there are so many useful options to pick from.
And not
Well,
as many
there's a lot of
standouts.
considerations, right? And there's also considerations like seeing what is the other person going to get and how is that going to influence my choice. Like, are you going to take Wishing Ring if the other person gets Dungeon Rulebook to destroy it?
Right.
That's essential.
Indeed. So hopefully, there's lots of intrigue and excitement that comes with the new treasure deck. Thieves, like we've said, they don't really care about the treasures, but I mean they've got some very interesting new effects from the previews we've seen so far. So who is the thief master? Who
That
wants
was
to talk
me.
about
I
that?
was the bandit lord.
if you will.
Ultimate
Yes.
bandit.
So yeah, thieves, they don't care about what particular treasures, but now they don't actually mention treasures specifically for any of their cards. Like they have cards that draw treasures, like Pickpocket still draws a treasure, but they don't care about discarding treasures or using treasures for effects anymore. Now it's all cards you don't own, which means thieves are actually doing thieving. Finally.
So how do they get cards that they don't own into their hand besides drawing treasures?
Well, new Master Thief has an ore to get cards from other players' discard piles if they try to attack your base, which was always a really big concern with old thieves. Like, you could get Master Thief out to get your treasure engine going, but if other players just rush the base, you're only going to get like 2, maybe 3 treasures out of it. But now they have a real disincentive to avoid going after it, because now they could give you some of their actions back, which, even though it's random and they've already used those actions or they've discarded them, whatever, it's still psychological warfare almost. And then on top of that, they've also got some really interesting cards like Strip Bear and Mugging, which can steal cards at really inopportune times. Or they've got the new Clever Distraction is kind of like a bribe where you're paying the thieves off to not steal from you in the future.
And they have help holding all those cards.
Oh yes, with new Pickpocket as well. Guaranteed treasure draw, which already a big improvement, but it also, for the first time ever in the game, plays with your maximum hand size. So you can get more cards in your hand and hold them for your big effects. Like your...
Okay, so the maximum hand size normally is 10.
Yes.
Right? And if you draw more than 10 cards at the end of your turn, or before the end of your turn, rather, you have to discard back down to 10. So you're saying Pickpocket increases the number of cards you can hold before you have to discard.
Correct. Like if you have 2 Pickpockets out, let's say, you can now hold 12 cards instead of just 10. Which is actually a big deal. Like every additional card could be a good segue into another effect on Potion Bandolier, which is kind of, I think, their big payoff card, where they've got a whole slew of effects they can get from this one big card if you want to dump a lot of treasures or other cards you've stolen into it. And, the visual we have is like, it's an actual bandolier of different kinds of potions. Like you've got your Swift Potion, your Haste Potion, your Sleep Potion, that's the Stasis Potion. You've got your Knowledge Potion for your draw. What was the other one? I think we had the Haste Potion for the extra
Play and
action.
extra action is
Yes.
the last one on it. So
Oh, yeah.
I love
yes.
I love Potion Bandolier, and I'm so glad we did not listen to Sonus, because Sonus wanted Sonusism on it, which is he wanted to limit it where it's like,
Oh,
no,
yes.
you can only do 2 of these things.
That would have been
Go
so
for
sad.
If you want to do all of them, you can, but then with what cards? You just
Exactly.
discard your entire hands.
After that, it's like it's self-balancing, and it just feels
Yeah.
so satisfying. And we did have sometimes people would go for all 5 effects, and it's like, if you can afford it, honestly, like throw 5 cards away to get all these effects, like, you go for it and have fun.
And honestly, something I like about it is that there's kind of two effects where you would use them to break a base, like the power and the movement. But then you've also got two effects which you use to set up, the draw and the stasis. And then to tie them together, you've got the extra action where you can use it to chain into whatever else, like get extra
You can
setup
use
or
it to
get
chain into
extra...
the other potion bandolier.
The other potion bandolier, sure, if you need to double up on your effects. That's, I think, the only reason you would ever do that, but...
I don't expect people to do more than 2 most of the time anyway.
No, I think...
I agree.
I agree. Most of the time, you maybe might get 3 if you want to get power move in extra action.
Well, and I want to go back real quick to the hand size discussion because I think we've maybe glossed over the fact that this is a brand new, never before seen mechanic in Smash Up.
Not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
Not for lack of trying. I mean, I know all 4 of us have said previously that one of the many big issues with Thieves is that they need more cards in their hand than they can actually fit. Because they want to accumulate all these treasures. They want to accumulate all these other players' cards now to fire off their powerful effects. Pickpocket has gone from one of the worst 2-power minions in the game with an ability that only half works at best to not only drawing a treasure card, which is really good for them, but also it has a second ability, and that's unseen so many times on 2-power minions.
Well, it gets you a treasure and it helps you hold it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so vital because in the past you usually were happy if you were holding 3 to 4 treasure, but then you needed cards you also wanted to play,
right?
And you didn't have space for all of that. So the hand
and not only did you not have space for all of them, but you couldn't use all of them because all of their payoffs required you to get rid of the cards.
So let's talk about, I mean, we've seen Fence. Fence has been publicly revealed at this point. You can still get the VP for discarding cards, but only before base scores, which is interesting. Or an extra card to help further score the base. It opens up a lot of intrigue. I want to talk about Cat Burglar because that was probably the second best Thieves card after Master Thief. Was very, very strategy driving for a lot of their combinations. So
I think
who wants to
that
talk
was
about that?
basically the Thieves game plan before, right? I'll give it to Berryl to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we settled on for the final version, but that was basically the Thieves game plan before. It's like you're gonna hoard all these treasures and you want to get everything in exactly the right order because you want to get all the treasures first. Then you want to play your cat burglars to reveal everything. You're going to generate a ton of power from that. You're going to break a base or 2, and then you're going to fence your way to victory after that with the bonus VP. And it was just so frustrating if you don't get the cards in exactly that order.
Because we addressed that in a couple of different ways, actually.
I got fence first before I have any treasures, before I have any cat burglars, and it's like, do I play it for the body? And it's an on play, right? So it's like, you better have the treasures when you play it, or you're not getting the VP from it to make it feel even worse to play early. Yeah. So it's like, what do I do with this? That's my opening minion in my opening hand. What am I doing with my first turn? It feels horrible.
Yeah.
And the cat burglar change and the fence change and other changes too is all about like this draw order dependency that's at the core of Thieves. But yeah, maybe Berryl, did you want to talk? Because cat burglar took a long time to get right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a change that people are not going to like.
There was a lot of resistance to changing cat burglar at all. Because it was one of Thieves' most powerful cards. It was a card you could easily get up to 6-7 power, which is pretty rare for a 3-power minion in that slot where it's got the 3 copies. Usually those get up to like 5 power relatively easily. But yeah, Cat Burglar could get up to basically as high as you wanted to as long as you could hold the treasures. And yeah, there was a lot of resistance to changing that because it was their only big payoff card before. But I think as we were able to add in more alternate ways for them to use their cards like Potion Bandolier and Backstab, which also can scale with the number of cards you don't own, discarding them to destroy somebody. We've figured out, okay, Cat Burglar is kind of too much at this point. Like, being able
they had so much more ability to draw treasures consistently and also hold more treasures.
Yeah, they were able to draw treasures more consistently, which means Cat Burglar could get bigger. And then there was also better things to hold the treasures for after you played the cat burglars. So you're getting double duty out of those treasures,
and it also kind of discouraged people from using some of those setup cards that you were talking about. Like, you could use Potion Bandolier for draw 2 and put something in stasis, which is a great setup action, but you're directly making your cat burglar weaker when you do that.
And so what we ultimately settled on was we did end up capping it how big it could get. But we actually
Sonus is-
made the rate of how it got that power better. So now it can discard any 2 cards. And if you don't own those cards, you get 2 power counters each. So it caps out at 7 power now. But you only need 2 cards to do that.
Very
Yes,
good for a
very
3-power
good
minion.
conversion
Yeah.
of cards to power.
And we
But
found that was generally the high average that was happening the most that
yes,
people like.
like if you remember
And
what I was
it's
saying
still kinda
earlier,
high
I was saying
that-
earlier 7 power is kind of what it was capping out at anyway. So you're not really losing
Well, the
all
thing
that
is
much
it
from the
wasn't
ceiling.
capping out at that with the new rate of treasure accrual.
Yes.
I saw some 9 power, 10 power cat burglars in some games. Like that was
Yes.
one of the stats we were tracking pretty carefully.
Yes, it was.
And it's not a good feeling, right?
No.
Like maybe as the thief player, but not as the other player. It's
Right.
like your
Games are just
3-power
ending
minion
too
is a
quick.
10 power
Yeah.
that you're dropping on me here. It
Yeah.
sucks.
It was
Right.
making it too hard to make other cards better too.
Yes,
So-
exactly. Yes. And so when we made that change, it definitely unshackled a lot of Thieves' potential. And just one last thing, if you do own the cards that you discard, you kind of help get to your better cards. It draws you more cards, which I think was another way that we helped with greasing the wheels, solving that draw order dependency. Because now you can use Cat Burglar for either setup or payoff, just like Potion Bandolier.
There's a lot of options with how to play them.
Yes.
And whatever configuration of cards you draw early you've got a path to use those cards
Yes.
for your game plan. And maybe tying in with that, smuggling was one, and I think I had to sell you
Ooh,
guys on
yes.
this a little bit. It's the game's first deck and discard pile swap, which is something that the game has looked at a couple times, maybe.
Yes.
Not to give too much away from behind the playtesting veil, I guess. But it's been looked at a few times with trying to make this concept work. And
There was always a problem with it.
was, I think, always one of the biggest arguers against it because of
I
the
talked
ability
them out of it.
charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a test game with zombies.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Zombies were always a
test
problem.
game with zombies and just obliterated my opponent in like 5 turns because
Yeah.
I got the deck and discard swapping card first thing.
Right.
That's our story for another time. But yes, it's something that definitely needs to be done very carefully.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes. And I think we got it right with Thieves because the key problem with not having a condition on it like we have on Smuggling, like you need to discard cards you don't own to get the swap. The key problem before was that you could just do it on turn 1. But now you really can't do that. Like unless you get very lucky with what you get. Like you need minions which get you more cards you don't own. I don't think Thieves internally can get 2 cards they don't own on turn 1. You have to wait a few turns before you can get those cards. And so it solves the problem of, I'm just going to put everything in my discards on. So my zombies are at go mode 2 turns into the game.
Right.
And and it also boxes itself, which is also a big thing. So you can't repeat it.
That's very important.
Yes.
That is important. Well, especially as a VP generation.
Yes,
as well.
of course.
And it was a weird card originally, right? Like it had this rider on it where it's like after you get the VP in the vanilla version, you shuffle your discard pile into your deck, and it's not clear why that's a good thing for Thieves or why they would want to do that.
Well,
it was very strange. I never quite
It
understood
was to
why that
hide
existed.
smuggling at the bottom of a big deck.
I think you're probably right, and they were clearly just so afraid of that card being recurred. And I wonder, if you have some of these tools like later in the game, you have things like Place in the Box, or the
Right.
Vikings being introduced. How different do Thieves look, even if some of those concepts exist?
Probably at least a little bit different. Hard to say at this point, but
Yeah.
What was the last Thief card to nail down? I want to say it was Mugging.
It was either Mugging or Strip Bear, whichever one ended up not getting condensed, but getting the new thing where it could steal cards.
It was.
Thieves had a lot of interesting little one-off cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a couple of things did get kind of combined into one card. I think Strip Bear is the one that ended up getting combined where you could steal a card that went to the discard pile, or you could just take something from play. It was, yes.
Take anything. Yeah.
Yes.
Grab anything off the board.
And then once those consolidated, Mugging became, I think Mugging was the last card to get nailed down.
For a new card. Yeah.
Yes. And I think Mugging we played around with either the opponent could give you cards to prevent a terminal style ability. I think like it was movement or something, but that didn't end up really working because it was hard to play speculatively, and so we ended up just making it a pure setup action. Like I'm going to get cards I don't own, but my opponent is going to choose. Okay, do I give you more cards from my hand, or do I give you cards when I don't know where they are, but they're not from my hand?
Yeah, I I think one of the big words for thieves that I always wanted, like I wanted it to feel like they were masters of misdirection in some sense, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you don't know exactly what they're gonna be, what they want, or what they're trying to do with some of their cards. So it makes like really interesting and engaging decisions for the other player. Because
I think,
I think one of the problems with thieves early on is like they just felt like they're doing their own thing, and like it's just going to happen at some point, right? Like I'm accruing treasures and it's going to be a time bomb for cat burglars eventually.
yeah,
I'm going to score VP. I'm going to steal VP from you. Like these are just things that are going to happen to you, and there's not much say you have over it other than just trying to win the game first. I think they're very engaging now with some of the decisions
agreed.
for other players.
And I
Thing
think
I'm glad we
like
seem to
clever
nail.
distraction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like clever distraction is a very interesting
It's
card.
actually a clever distraction now.
Yeah. And one thing I'm glad we nailed was with how much they can get treasures, and then how much better treasures are. I still found I almost was never actually playing the treasures still.
Found I
You
was
could,
playing the treasures
but
sometimes.
it was still not
Some of
as
them are
much
worth
as you might
playing.
think with how
No.
much they get and how much better treasures got. You're like, I need these cards if I want to use a single thief card.
Yes.
So it still worked out.
Yeah.
I find the most common time I do it is as the extra action off Potion Bandolier because I'm
Yeah.
already in the middle of a big play, so I cap it off with an extra treasure that's going to do something big.
Like a potion of idiotic bravery or whatever.
Sure.
Let's talk about orcs. This seems like a good break in the conversation to pivot and talk about
Yes, I agree. I
the
think Halo
final
Thieves.
majorly changed faction.
Yes.
Who was the orc
Yeah.
master?
It was actually one of
Norm.
us. It was Normelian,
Yeah.
and he did this. This was the guy that was the Penguins lead in the
Yes.
first 10 factions we did, and Penguins I think was one of the toughest of the first 10,
Yeah.
For
and then
sure.
he came off that onto orcs, and he just did a fantastic job in both cases. I can't
Yeah.
speak highly
Orcs were
enough.
also pretty tough.
I think they were very tough. And the reason they were so tough for orcs was even more so than clerics. It's like, what are orcs? Like, what are they even doing? We changed 19 out of 20 of their cards, and some of them to the point that they're not even recognizable anymore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You look at a lot of the orc cards, especially those that have been revealed so far, and it almost looks like we've played like a shell game. We've just switched around different abilities. Like Gimme now has Talon do nothing, and Topper Chopper now has the ability
Angry
formerly
Pillagers.
used by Angry Pillagers, and
I think
I guess yeah.
that was part of the thing with orcs is it's like all their all their abilities are maybe not the worst idea in theory. Like, yeah, they get power from like VP from overkill, right? Like that's a good idea. Um, is it in the right place, or is there somewhere else that makes more sense for it? So it's like, how do we make this faction make sense?
Yeah, and it was nice to be able to like what the abilities were good, but not good enough to be the only ability a card has.
Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, we were able to keep what a lot of cards were doing, like protecting, but making the card useful in additional ways by putting it with something else.
Dorkwork is an interesting case of that because for the longest time it was something completely different where
It
you
was
wanted
very,
to
very different.
play your minions in a way where you could you powered it up by playing minions on its base that were bigger than it.
Yeah, so it would
And
like rise to the challenge to try to match them.
yeah, it worked, but like not
It wasn't
great.
satisfying. It was very awkward.
Yes, it was very. We ended
Which,
up
in fairness, was kind of
jerry
fitting
rigging
for
like
like a
Angry
dork, but
Pillagers and what's the soldier Topper
yeah,
Chopper? No,
it was
Hammer
making
Slammer.
them very very one dimensional. I think in
Yes.
how they played, right? Like you had to start bottom up, and you had to, lead in a chain there in a way that would result in the biggest overall power. And it's like it wasn't very engaging with
No.
how to play it.
I think there's an
Orcs
interesting idea there for something else, but it didn't end up working for Orcs. And
It's
it's funny,
not the right one for orcs.
the final version of Dork Orc actually kind of looks a lot like its vanilla ability.
Yeah. And protection was something that people did highlight that they liked in theory about orcs.
Yeah.
The idea of being able to have like that unblockable presence. And I think Dork Orc actually does a better job of that now because it's complete protection, right? Like
Yes.
it can't be touched by anything, but you and it even powers up at the same time, but you also have to pay for it with your regular plays, which is I think
Yes.
quite interesting with the networking there. But orcs in general, like the game plan, like there was early on a question is like, do orcs play a lot of minions or do orcs play big minions? And there's stuff in their original version, the vanilla version, that kind of has elements of both. So it's like you've got Sword Lord who says, I want lots of minions out there, obviously. But you've also got Topper Chopper, who's his whole thing is he's bigger than normal. It's not clear exactly like what they're going to do, but what we settled on was orcs play big minions and they also play lots of minions, but they also can't restock. So it's like they have these big chain plays that they can do where they can play lots of big minions out, lots of extra power, but they have absolutely no way to recover their hand size afterwards. That's really their Achilles heel, and it's a clear intentional gap. We've never before had a swarm faction with zero draw, going all the way back to robots with Tech Center. That was their big restocking play. And there was always this idea with swarm factions, they need to restock after they burst or while they burst or before the burst, they need to stock up with, horses have draw and halflings have lunch runs and Shield has their big mission debriefing play. We've never had a swarm faction that they just stock up ahead of time naturally and then they just blow them all at once. And orcs are a lot of fun that way.
And I think Dork Orc actually ends up playing into that a lot because not having any draw means if you draw a minion in action every turn, you want to play those cards so that you're not wasting your plays, but that means you don't have any extra cards for your extra plays. And so Dork Orc helps you use your plays in a way that still lets you accrue resources in your hand for those big plays without having any draw.
And you're also guaranteed VP, right? If somebody rushes Dork Orc's base while he's powering up there, they can't remove him. So you'll still get some residual VP from that to add on to your big burst that you're going to do later in the future.
Well, I'm not sure I'd even call them swarm. I know they were pretending like they should be swarm, but it seemed like we took an adjacent approach where like swarm means you have a lot of power there. Instead, we're just going to condense that power into fewer cards. And that,
they definitely have quality of cards.
Yes.
Yeah. And they don't have any draw, which you have to get the stuff, but when you get it, it's going to be quality.
Well, I think part of the idea with orcs was that they have high value per card, and so even though they don't have any draw, the cards they're getting are still worth playing.
Exactly.
Ties in with their antagonism as well, right?
Yes.
Like slowing down the game makes more sense if
Right.
you've got really good cards that you're saving up for to play.
Right.
And they have a lot of benefiting for setting up for a turn, like the Hammer Slammer's additional ability to lower breakpoint after destroying a card. And it's very nice that it's intentionally destroying a card rather than just destroying a minion.
Because they've
got,
got
they can destroy minions.
They've got I think is it stalling or too tough that is a minion modifier now?
It's not stalling, it's too tough.
Okay, it's too tough.
It's a protection card, but then it can blow itself up for an extra play later on.
And that intentionally combos with the new Hammer Slammer.
Yeah. And I wouldn't call them just a swarm faction. Like they've got extra plays of both kinds, right?
Yes,
like
they've
got extra actions off of stalling. Too tough.
I think we settled on their image as less of a swarm and more of a horde.
They only have two extra plays.
Right? Like they hoard their cards and then they play a bunch all at once.
So both meanings of horde.
Yeah, both spellings. I think it's interesting. We earlier today we were talking about estimates of where the Munchkin factions fall. Roughly what power order, and something I think all of us, that the exact order, there's some disagreement, but all of us tend to agree that orcs are right at the top of the list now. They're the most powerful Munchkin faction. Which is something I could not have foreseen at all prior to this.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think they can do a lot, but I think that I'm not sure. Like I honestly think like clerics and thieves, like they've got so much more flexibility. Like I think they could
Mhm.
really surprise, but we're just gonna have to see, right? Like we don't
Right.
know. We
Uh,
haven't
yeah.
had enough games with this new stuff to really be able to tell.
I think it's
And I
one of
think
those things where it's like thieves are complex, orcs, you're just going to throw down some strong cards. So it feels like it's easier to tell how strong they are. Whereas
Yeah.
thieves, I'm sure, have a
Right.
lot to be discovered still.
I think there's a
It's
lot to discover with thieves, and
Absolutely.
especially like interesting fence plays.
the reason I put orcs so high is because they have the high value per card, and they don't have any draw themselves, but so many partners have draw now. Like it's so
Yes.
easy to unshackle that weakness from them.
It does kind of feel like you want, like, need to almost, though. So I like that tension at least. You can try to gamble and not do it, and you still might have a decent game, but you'll want to try to find draw if you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's not necessary, but if you have it, it makes them so much
Yeah.
better.
It definitely helps a lot. And I wonder with what other interesting partners are going to be found for orcs that don't exploit draw. Like something
Mhm.
that, for example, that always surprised me was how much success AndIQuote found with warrior tornadoes, right? Neither of those factions had any draw previously, but they
Still don't.
complement each other so perfectly that it doesn't even matter. And I wonder, like, are there similar no draw pairings that really lean into that aspect of orcs that embrace just I'm not playing many cards, or at least I'm not drawing lots of extra cards, but it's just really high value per card, and they're just going to align perfectly.
I think normally they don't like orc mounties.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
one of the
that's
only
cool.
ones left. Or dinosaurs are hard to
Dinosaurs.
draw.
Yeah.
But I bet you it's still
We've,
going to have that feeling.
yeah, we've already discussed playing Gimme on King Rex to give him the talent to do nothing.
Doubled by
And
Great Wolf Spear.
the power that contains. So
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
I hope people
awesome.
I hope people like Gimme now.
Yes.
yes, yes, I think there's a lot to like there for sure.
I do want to say, since we brought it up in Thieves with maximum hand size being a new mechanic to be
Oh, yeah.
increased,
Yes.
orcs have the ability to lower someone's maximum hand size, which
Yes.
is really big aggro on the
First
new end
time
state.
ever.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
It's going both
Yes,
ways.
that if increasing your maximum hand size means you get to hold more than 10 cards in your hand, decreasing your hand size means you have to discard more at the end of the turn, right?
It's just
Yay.
a really fun way to, like, we're not going to draw cards, so you don't get to hold as many cards.
Exactly.
It kind of
Right,
had the same
right.
feeling as Bare Necessities in Bear Cav with this faction has a big weakness, but they're going to make everybody suffer that weakness.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You stay on the space, you don't get to play extra cards in that
Yeah.
case. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting strategy, and that ability is on and stay down, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it-
Base
okay.
modifier.
Yes.
Yeah, and stay down, which is now a base modifier. Was not formerly.
No.
So I think, yeah, definitely. Orcs, I think we can all agree, are probably among the most intriguing of the reworks, just
Agreed.
because of
Yeah.
finding an identity for them to
Feels
use.
very fresh.
Yes.
The one unchanged
yes.
card is that iconic Sword Lord for all that.
Yes,
We're worried
yes.
about that.
Orc robots can still be
Changed
scary.
everything else to work with Sword Lord.
Okay, so let's talk about who do we want to talk about? Elves or halflings first? Because
We can do
both
elves
of
and
them.
halflings real quick.
There's nothing to talk about halflings except
Yep.
for one rewording, which I was really happy to get in. Other than that, I think halflings and elves, to some extent, kind of have this perception. Sonus has said it once before, so maybe I'll pass it to him for his thoughts. Especially, he's had more experience with Munchkin in particular. But elves and halflings both always felt to me like it's amazing that these factions work as well as they do. They shouldn't work by all accounts, especially elves have such a weird set of stuff that they do, and it's crazy that it actually works. So we really didn't want to rock the boat very much, and just kind of let them do their thing.
Yeah. Well, so elves were really good in 3-player because you could just do the benefits to the player that's the lowest threat to you. And for a long time, not just my group, but the community didn't think elves were that good in 2-player for that reason. But I think something that developed over time was that threat of thing where it's like, it's so efficient for them to take my victory point right here if they have that card, or the
Yeah.
specials start, like the threat of the special. And so then Flower Child with setup minions being so good in 2-player, a Flower Child is just like, never mind, here's this instead, and you have to worry about that.
It's
So
global too.
yeah, you're just
Mhm.
questioning what can I actually get away with, and that picked up steam in 2-player too.
Yeah, I want to say it was probably Bandit, a combination of Bandit and Nelligand, both, in their own separate ways, who really helped me see how powerful elves could be. I mean, there's the classic elf explorers
I like Elf Explorers.
that we saw in the day of smashing a few years ago that Bandit brings up anytime you mention either one of those combos.
Has he played it before? I don't know.
I don't think
Never
so.
heard of it.
Does he like it?
No. Couldn't be.
And then there's, elves as a counter to dragons was what sticks out to me a few years ago when Nelligand was really into his 1v1 tournaments to try and test out his own tier list. And just the ways they can mess with some very oppressive factions in the game by just taking their cards.
Yep.
They did it years before Vikings were a thing. I agree fully. Elves
So the
don't make
changes to
sense.
elves,
Yeah,
the changes to elves were subtle. It was one of them is a buff and one of them is a nerf. So pumping iron, it does something
Probably should have done all along.
it probably shouldn't have been able to do that before, which was the other player can choose to boost monsters. Which really kind of screwed up any kind of elf burst that they were trying to line up. The other one I think is more intriguing, which is the nerf. And Berryl, why don't you talk about
Yeah,
this?
so Helping Hands, their VP steel card, which they can play basically for free as long as they have a minion there, and then if the other player wins the base, they get one of their VPs. It was a very, very oppressive card. Like Nelligend, in his brackets, famously used Elf Kree to play it 3 times in a game at some point, and that's basically stealing a whole extra base. Like, how do you win against that? And so the nerf we made to it was it gets shuffled into the player's deck you played against. And I'm a little worried about how much that's going to rock the boat.
It seems
But
pretty
it's
fitting.
yes, it's very fitting for elves because they might not get the card back. It's shuffled into the deck. You don't know where it is. But also trade exists so elves can get it back potentially.
Yeah, and they still have their runaway specials, which are very strong.
Yes. Which I'm
Yes.
kind of realizing if you kick somebody off before they have a chance to Helping Hands, then they can't Helping Hands. So you get a solo and you avoid the threat of Helping Hands with Runaway.
Hopefully, this at least makes elves question a little bit when they're going to play Helping Hands. They might
Yeah.
have to wait till the end of the game now,
Right.
which still has a strength to it. The opponent's worried about it the whole time.
yeah.
So
That's punishing a close game right there. Is
Yeah.
being able to swoop in and take that last crucial VP. So Ludichrisness, would you like to talk about warriors?
So Warriors, it was mentioned earlier by Ludi, and that it was great to try to slow down bases with monsters. But the problem they ran into, which got noticed early on, which is also a reason why Eternal Hero didn't end up broken, was they competed too much to play their own cards. And some of the
what
cards,
we call 2 cards of turnitis.
yeah, 2 cards of turnitis, exactly. And a lot of the problems were actually specifically in their actions. It was hard to make use of an action when you had to play another action before it. So it was pretty popular to try to pair them with extra actions. So
Warrior Kree, Warrior
it's-
Werewolves, things
exactly.
Laden,
It's-
yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed like they really didn't need much. The play style was very solid. It's just they needed a slight internal boost, and Berserker looked like a perfect spot to throw the ability to gain an extra action.
Oh my gosh, you guys are talking about warriors. I'm sorry, I was just having some audio stuff there.
No worries.
Warriors. I love warriors, and this is for the longest time, I told all 3 of these guys that the only change that warriors needed was that Berserker had to play an extra action, and nobody believed me. And then we tried it, and it was great.
Believed
And
you.
so many issues for
Nobody
them.
believed you. I don't believe that.
Nobody believed me. I was the lone voice crying in the wilderness. But actually, Warriors got a couple other buffs too, and I really
Yes,
like
that was
all
not
of
the
them.
only change.
They still have no draw, which I think is a good limitation for them because they've like orcs. They have really high value per card, but I
But
feel
also they
like
can
I
draw
can just
treasures.
achieve their potential so much more often. They've
Yeah.
got so many really important, powerful actions, and now they actually have an opportunity to play them back to back.
Yeah, and with the treasure changes, they're gonna love getting those treasures, and with the monster changes,
Oh,
they're
yes.
gonna love being able to control the monsters on the board. So
Yes, the monster changes were very good for them.
Yeah, so let's talk about the monster changes then, because I
Yes.
don't think we talked about those yet.
No.
We've alluded to the fact that people will be glad to be able to get rid of the monsters more easily with like Tiger Steed. But so what does that look like in practice for the monsters? This is the area that I personally am probably least familiar with, because I didn't touch the monster menagerie whatsoever really during this whole process.
The monster deck is very interesting because it's so tightly related to the base deck.
Yes.
The average power of a monster has to be 3, because you want something kind of predictable for the bases. If it's not somewhere close to 3, then bases are either too cheap or they're too expensive, which is what we saw the first time with Munchkin, where they just became a slog because so many monsters were powering up way beyond their weight class. But so many of the original monsters went beyond that. You had Poultrygeists that could get quite large. You had Web Trolls, which were essentially a +1 on another monster. You had Night of the Living Dead, who could just get stupidly big.
Yep.
You had Bigfoot, who could be a 7. It was just really obnoxious, right?
Indeed.
Yes.
So at the same time, like, you also have to come up with abilities for monsters which they don't clearly favor one type of faction. They need to be simple enough that, especially for the most common monsters, that it can make sense in any game for them to come out, and it's very obvious how they work. I really like the monsters that we ended up with.
Yes.
And there's a couple oddballs in there, especially at the high levels. Like the 5 power monsters are pretty crazy, but the most common ones that you're going to see, Poultrygeist. There's no more crazy counting with it. It's either a 2 or it's a 3, and there's no in between.
Just a binary condition.
Just a binary condition, yeah. And Web Troll, I think, is really fun.
I think Web Troll's my favorite.
Web Troll is really cool. What I've liked is not just the first time you destroy it, that you can stretch your destruction further. And I think that kind of captures what Sonus was talking about previously, which is sort of the promise of monsters is it gives new meaning to destruction factions where they can now use their destruction to break a base. So now Web Troll is pushing that further. And instead of a destruction of 2, you're getting a swing of 4. I've also really liked with Web Troll, though, when people start wrestling over it. So it's like, I'm going to destroy it and take control, but then somebody else is going to, destroy it and steal it from me. It's so much fun when that happens.
Yes.
It's like, please don't destroy me. I'll join you. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, so Plutonium Dragon has been revealed. His new ability, right, with the coin flipping mechanic, the flipping 2 coins at once, which has never before been done.
So we brought back like every new mechanic that was not already in the original 10 rebalances.
Yeah, that one took the longest to get right. Yes. I think we knew from the start Plutonium Dragon kind of sucks. The original one. We don't want it, but we also can't think of anything better. I think it was actually Bandit that came up with this, and it's pretty cool. So the idea was you've got this big monster, and the problem with big monsters in general is that most factions can't interact with it even if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So once you get past a power 3 monster, there's very few factions that can touch a 4, and there's vanishingly few factions that can touch a 5. So it just becomes this big pile of breakpoint on a base that a lot of people can't really interact with, and it doesn't make it much fun.
Oh, and a lot of the factions that can touch 5 power minions touch specifically power 5 minions that other players own, because it's like Into the Time Slip.
Sure.
What's the aliens card? Beam Up. Or Dusty Henry. They shuffle them into the deck. They return an owner's hand. Those don't work on monsters.
Stuff that you can't do against monsters. And that's why Warriors really had such a monopoly before on being able to interact, especially with the really big monsters. They were always so happy to see Plutonium Dragon or to see especially Night of the Living Dead, because nobody else is going to be able to do anything with it, and it just makes your eventual Warcry or something so much stronger, or your Cleave or something like that. So with Plutonium Dragon's ability in particular, there was really a desire that it should be a gamble where it's like anybody's got an opportunity to take this out. And it's such a juicy target because you get, what is it? Is it 3 treasures on it, I think?
Most of anybody.
So it's like you're really wondering, like, can I risk it? Should I risk it? It draws a lot of attention, and eventually, like, it's a 1 in 4. Like, somebody is going to take it out likely. But also along the way, it might take out a few of your minions too. So it just makes it a really fun dynamic.
Agreed.
What about Night of the Living Dead? Because that's the other. I mean, we've already alluded to how egregiously large that could get. What does it do now that it's not so obnoxious anymore?
Well,
I feel like
it's still
this one also
obnoxious.
took a long time to figure out.
Yeah.
I think after the Orc dueling card went away is when dueling went to the Night of the Living Dead.
I don't think it was specifically because we wanted to have dueling.
But it was serendipitous.
Represented being like knights too. There was some
Yes,
theme
there was a
reference.
big discussion about because it's a knight, it can host a joust.
What did it do previously? There was something with undead where it would
It gain
raise
abilities
undead
or
monsters
something.
from the discard.
Yeah, there was something about it resurrecting minions or something.
Yeah,
Forget exactly what.
it's hard to say, but I really like what it ended up as. I think
Yeah, agreed.
something I've talked about before, and I know Bandit has talked about. There's not that many timings when a duel really makes sense. And one of the only ones that does make sense is before the base scores and destroy the losing minion. So what you see with Sheriff and what you see with not honorable combat, the other one,
Part of
the
battle.
samurai dueling tree. Yeah, yeah. So, and that's where it really becomes cool because you get all the benefits of playing an action in phase 3, which are pretty tremendous. You get removal before the base scores, which is also very powerful. But at the same time, somebody else also gets the ability to do that. So
Yeah,
there's
I was about to ask, because as we've talked about Night of the Living Dead doing dueling, Night of the Living Dead is not dueling one of your minions.
No.
He is
No.
triggering a duel between you and another player, right?
Yeah. And that's right. So it's you and it's the 2 players with the most power, basically. So 2-player, that's pretty obvious. 3-player, 4-player, whoever is the closest competitor, and it gives an opportunity for either an upset or it gives an opportunity to kick somebody off with the destruction from the duel or whatever else your dueling action could do. The Night of the Living Dead, and I really like it in monster form, especially on a big monster, because when it comes out, it's going to be saying like this base is going to not be scoring for a while because this is such a big monster. So it gives people time to prepare the perfect dueling action for it. So like they're going to have something good. Compare that to Sheriff, who himself adds 5 power and can easily be a terminal minion sprung by surprise. You're much less likely that both players or at least the victim, like the sheriff's victim, is going to have something worth playing.
And
I
that's
find
actually a good point, is that the minions that have to duel because of the knight are the biggest minions that can be dueling.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot rarer for a 5 to be beaten up a 2.
It's an interesting dynamic for sure. And I am glad, even setting aside, like, I think like it's a good concept for a card and for a monster. I am glad that we were able to get dueling in some capacity, because I think when you talk about mechanics that people say they wish they saw again at some point, dueling is often up there.
Yes.
Inexplicably.
Inexplicably.
I like dueling.
There you go.
Has
1 out of 4.
I like when samurais do dueling, or sheriff. Everything after that feels egregious. Okay.
It's just basis now, right?
Just bases, yes, and we've touched on them a little bit already, just in the conversation about monsters. But what's different about the Munchkin bases going forward? Because, like I said at the beginning, I did not like these bases. I don't think anybody did, really.
Well, the biggest change is they're good now.
Birthday Party did have its defenders.
Which one?
Birthday Party.
Oh my god.
There were some bases that were fine, but in general, like Subterranean Lair was generally fine. Dimension Doors generally fine, but
yeah, the mayor's bases were okay. Yeah.
I think there's just a lot more fun bases now, honestly.
Yes.
Like there's a lot more that are they're not just like, oh, that's a pretty bland ability that might happen once if ever. It's like some of them, the base abilities before were just really, really limited. Like what was the worst one? It was Thieves Guild. After you play a treasure on this base, draw a card. Like I've seen that come out, and it's on a 4/3/2 for some reason, and it's like, how many times do you really expect this to trigger?
Right.
Throwing stats, numbers on a dartboard. You're throwing for the VP and the ability.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But there are some really fun abilities now, and in particular, I like how some of them internalize concepts of monsters and treasures.
Yeah.
So, for example, the mines is one of my favorite ones. So after you play a minion there, let's say you play a 4-power minion there, you look at 4 cards from the treasure deck, and then you put them on top or the bottom. And the mines itself comes with 2 monsters. So on average, those 2 monsters are 3 power. They're going to award probably 4 treasures or so.
I think it's more
So
likely to be
if
like
you
3 treasures total.
yeah. So if you think that you're going to be able to win the base, you want to keep the best treasure for you on top, and you want to be bottom decking the treasures that are going to be better for your rivals. But at the same time, if you think you're going to lose the base, maybe there's a really good card and you want to get rid of that or move it to the bottom so that the other players aren't the player that wins the mines isn't going to get it. But you also have to account for, there's other bases with monsters that might score before then and award those treasures. So you can use the mines to set up the payoff you're going to get from a different base scoring, or even just from destroying a monster if you've got that ability later on, like with warriors. So you can see what your cleave is going to hit ahead of time. And there's a lot of interesting possibilities that it opens up with being able to see and rearrange the treasure deck. And I love it. It adds such an interesting dimension to the game.
Another good one's the pits.
Yes, that is a good base. Whoever came up with that is the pits is really cool. It adds it basically creates disco style action copying for monsters. So it's like you affect one monster with a standard action, and then you get to affect another one the same way, or
No, it's any
even just a
minion.
minion,
You
right?
can
So
copy the
you
effects
move a
onto
minion
monsters.
away, and you can drag a monster with it. And there's just so many interesting plays that you can set up with that concept. It actually started life as a custom faction base that I had made previously, and I'm really glad that it made its way into the mainline product because it's just a very very fun ability.
That's neat when that happens, when
Yeah.
some of us have base abilities that we make up for fun and then they get canonized as official bases.
It has happened a few times in the
It has.
rebalances so far.
Yes. Definitely
This is
easier
my
for
first
bases
time
than
for
for
one of
anything
mine, though.
else.
Yes, the Ludichrisness has very generously canonized other people's bases before he's considered one of his own, but it's a good choice.
I mostly just look for what makes the most sense, to be honest, with the base concept.
I like that
Right.
for birthday party. We kept tension, but didn't make it lock up
Yes.
games.
Yes, for sure. No, you just
'Cause,
need
yeah,
to
the
discard.
tension was nice, but
What does
Yes.
birthday party do now?
now it's
If
after
you
play
don't have a minion
on-
there, you have to discard if you play somewhere else.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. That is a good way to handle that, I think. Keep the spirit of the original base, but
Exactly.
also make it not insufferable.
Make it not able to lock the game up.
Birthday party is definitely low on the list of Munchkin bases for me. So glad to hear that it's changing. I'm sure other people will be glad too, except for that one guy who likes it apparently.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, we've been talking for almost 2.5 hours now at this point. So, is there anything else we would like to say about a Munchkin or the rework? Or shall we go ahead and wrap things up and kind of just let our listeners know what to expect from us going forward?
Yeah, what else will
Well,
you use
just
the
with
fours be
regards
doing?
to the rebalance, maybe if I can just start off with that. I really hope people like this. Munchkin has always been a really divisive expansion. In some ways, it's felt like its own game.
Even
I
more than like
was-
the IP expansions.
I agree. Yeah, because it brings in its own unique mechanics. I was so pleased that we had the opportunity here to follow up on the rebalances from the original game and be able to really make these factions shine. I think anybody that liked the concept of them before will really enjoy playing them now. They've got great feels to them, great gameplay, in my opinion. And yeah, I just hope people really like it. Print on demand creates a lot of interesting opportunities for the game. I believe there is more to come. With some of the possibilities that it opens up. And I know AG is excited about that as well. So one last thing that I'll mention just logistically for anybody that's listening, if you haven't had a chance to check out Forgefire, which is likely live by now by the time you're listening to it, the way that Munchkin Print on Demand is going to be distributed is you can either buy the individual factions by themselves, which is going to be similar pricing to what you have for other individual factions on print on demand, or you can buy one of two bundles. So the first bundle is going to be an upgrade kit, which combines basically every change to every card we touched in Munchkin, which is a huge number. It's like maybe like 3/4 of the cards in Munchkin have been changed, maybe like between 2/3 and 3/4. But it's about 150 individual cards that you would be getting there. It's fantastic value just for the upgrade kit there. And then the other one is if you don't have Munchkin already and you just want to get everything at a reduced price, we also have a bundle for all 8 factions and the monsters and the treasures, and obviously each faction comes with its bases. So you've got 2 options to be able to buy everything together at a discount. It's not included in the Kickstarter, which is going to be fulfilling later this year, so into the Fun Factory. But there are some good opportunities to get it at a discount here altogether for upgrading your collection just via print on demand.
Yeah, that's the print on demand has created some very exciting opportunities, and I think it sounds like AEG has taken notice, and it seems that it's been a success so far, which means they have more reason to continue to invest in Smash Up.
Exactly.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So
Wrap it up.
Yes, let's go ahead and wrap it up. I wanted to. We've talked about some ideas of where we could go from here. I know originally, my whole concept for this podcast was discuss factions in depth, especially with the reworks, like certain combinations, what makes the faction really work, get at the nitty-gritty of it. But there's so many other things we could do. I think probably what would be most helpful for our listeners is to do a player's dictionary coming up, where we can to just talk about all the slang terms and phrases that we use in the Discord server with each other in private conversation, and we all know what it means. But I know that new people probably get overwhelmed with the various phrasings that we use that are not. Sometimes they're in the rule book, and sometimes they're just terms we have made up. Or
And
borrowed
sometimes
from
the terms that have
or
sometimes they have different meanings for other games.
Types of pop.
Right.
Yes.
So that's maybe something we can look forward to here soon. I also today pushed out the latest update to our. I say our. I'm the one who pushes it, but it's really a group effort. A 2-player tier list based off of tournament data and vibes that I have been steadily working on with the community for a long time. So I would like to do an episode at some point that just goes over each faction's position in that tier list and why it's there. We could probably break that up into a few episodes, actually.
Yeah.
And then just, at some point, maybe as part of a larger episode, I would like to shine attention on our custom faction community.
Oh my gosh,
because
so much.
A thriving custom fan-made faction community. We are admins of a fandom wiki, in fact, that aggregates custom factions, and we have over 330 right now. 350.
We recently hit 350.
Yes,
And
there's
quantity
hundreds.
doesn't tell the whole story there. Like, these are some very high quality factions.
Very.
Like, there's a lot of stuff there. The vast majority of that, I think, is on par with, or in some cases better than what you get in the main Smash Up product.
Yes, so if you like Smash Up and you're hungering for more, come check out the custom faction wiki, because it's made by people who love the game, and we take Smash Up mechanics and push them to their absolute limit, if not beyond, in a lot of cases. New mechanics, new concepts to explore, or revisiting old concepts. There's a lot to work with there, so it's a very exciting scene. And I strongly encourage anyone who's interested in creating to come check out our Discord server. And we're very enthusiastic. I worry that sometimes we're a little overly enthusiastic with new designers, but we intimidate them a little bit. But if you've got an idea in mind, we will be happy to help you shape that into something that you will be proud of. Well, I guess I'm going to be editing this episode tomorrow, or later today, rather, for me, so that it's out in time for Monday's Munchkin release. So I bid you all a good night, and
good night.
to those of you who made it this far into the podcast, thank you so much, and I hope you will continue to come back for more. This has been Use the Force.